Welcome back, everybody, to the Deconversionists, unraveling your conversion. We are here today to talk about Christian joy being fabricated. Take Elliott, for example. He's miserable right now in this weather he's facing. Elliott, why do you hate hot weather so much?
Oh, probably because I'm an atheist, so I'm compelled to hate everything, right? And apparently God created the weather, and I hate God, so I fucking hate the weather.
That tracks. It absolutely tracks, man. I could totally follow that. Are these? Hang on a second. Oh, I am clicking. Okay, now the link is pinned to the top. I guess it wasn't. Crispin Slick, greetings. Welcome to the Heathenhood. It's great to have you. That's a good show. We should call it the Heathenhood.
Okay,
I like that.
All right.
The Heathenhood. Somebody's going to steal that now.
And they are, because you have already named the channel, so it's not.
I'm going to lose out on being rich. That's it. I'm patenting it right now, everybody. I am marking this moment. You may not
patent a name.
You can
Copyright.
Copyright. I'm doing a poor man's.
Not sure if you could even copyright a name.
Doing a poor man's copyright on the name. He's the Heathenhood, and I'm going to do a show called the Heathenhood.
Well, we're both writers. I don't know if you've run into this before, but apparently you cannot copyright a title, because if you go and look on Amazon, there's many books by the same title. Because I think writing the writing of books anyway is like one of the protected activities under the First Amendment. Like, you can't stop somebody from writing a book.
That is true. No, you're absolutely right. You can do that, show names, all that kind of stuff. But you can't do multiple channels with the same name on YouTube. So
yeah.
If somebody decides to start a channel,
speech. Yep.
Yeah, which is why I'm the Unraveler AB, because apparently there's another Unraveler out there, and I've researched them and tried to track them down, and literally they like produce nothing. It's like, it's not even anything to do with like unraveling stuff. It's just they call themselves the Unraveler. I think it's about, like, if I remember correctly, it's about sewing or something. It's like really weird. I'm like, so anyway, yeah, but they haven't produced anything.
It's like, frustrating, isn't it?
It is. I'm like, can you just,
when someone's standing in the way of your future success?
So anyway, so I'm the Unraveler AB for Alan Bondar. It's fine. So anyway, so just to keep things simple, I just kept that moniker across all of my social media accounts. Well, some of them could have been the Unraveler, but then it's not consistent.
So, Unraveler, great Unraveler, what are you here to unravel tonight?
I am the great Unraveler. I am the great Unraveler from the Heathenhood. From the Heathenhood tonight. To unravel Christian joy is fabricated. That is what we are talking about tonight. Interesting.
Now, when you say fabricated, what exactly do you mean by that? We'll play the definition game. We'll argue about that for 30 minutes.
Sure. Some synonyms come to mind: manipulated, created, not genuine, forced. Those are a lot of good synonyms that come from fabricated.
Do you think these Christians are knowingly lying in some way?
No, I don't think they are fabricating their own joy. I think the joy that they tend to have is fabricated because they have. So let's start here. Neither you or I believe a God exists. So if it is true that a God does not exist, let's just grant us that argument for a moment. If there's no God that exists, but all of your joy comes from God, then that's fabricated. That doesn't make sense.
If you claim that all your joy comes from God, yeah.
Right. So in Christianity, by and large, and I don't know what your theology was, but there is this idea of this deep-seated inner joy that the Christian has because of God in their life. And you can't have that without God. You're missing it. You can synonymously call it peace or love or whatever it is, but it's this deep-seated thing, this deep happiness inside of you that's different than just like laughing at something or being happy for a day. It's deep-seated that can never be taken away from you. You just have this all the time.
The peace that passes understanding.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right.
My theology said that all joy that wasn't based in Christianity or the Bible or God or whatever bullshit was fake. It was counterfeit. That was the word that was used. Yeah, counterfeit joy.
Right. Somebody
joy without Jesus.
someone in the comments said placebo effect. That's another good synonym for fabricated. So that's kind of what I'm talking. So so when you think about what Christianity does, it creates a problem, and then it sells you the cure. And so you are miserable. You find out that you are miserable without God, because that's the problem that's created. As long as you're a sinner, you're told you're miserable. Like, I can't tell you how convinced I was that I would be miserable without God. Like, it's just this, that's what's fabricated. It's this lie that's taught to you, and you come to embrace it so deeply that you become convinced that you are just completely and utterly never going to be happy unless you have God. Like, sure, you can have moments where you'll laugh or whatever, but you're never going to have that deep inner joy that you desperately desire. And so the only solution to you being this horrible person that's just might as well be Hitler, this horrid person. Let me shut my Outlook down. Sorry about that beeping in the background. So the only way to overcome that, misery that you are, that not only that you are, but that you're going to bring to the world without God, is to have God in your life, and then you can be happy. And so it's fascinating, because number one, you have that fabricated idea that you're this horrid sinner that's not worth anything, right? So that's the first problem, and that you have this problem that you're only miserable all the time, and you hear it all the time. That's why all this weeping happens at funerals, at non-Christian funerals, because they have no hope. But look at us here at our funerals, we have hope. And so, like, you're holding back like this misery, you're holding back this utter deep sadness that you lost somebody, because you have to display this joy that this person went to heaven. It's all very, very bizarre. So you have this constant like fabrication in your life that you are miserable. And so now you need something to change that. And and this is where I became, as a Christian, I became what's known as a Christian hedonist. Those of you who know John Piper will know what I'm talking about.
I do not, in fact, know what you're talking about. So
okay.
For me, go ahead and explain it.
Sure. So John Piper argued that that everybody's a hedonist. By nature, we tend to do what makes us happy. It's just natural to do that. His argument, though, was that what you choose as the object of your desire, or the object of your happiness, is what will affect your happiness in your life, and how it plays out. So his argument was that there's nothing wrong with hedonism in and of itself. It's what you place your joy in, what you place your focus on. So what is the object of your pleasure is really the question that you have to ask when you're a hedonist. And he said, if it's God, then now you have infinite joy at your disposal, right? Because God is infinite joy.
Cool.
Yeah, I agree. Pretty cool. So, I mean, I bought into that hook, line, and sinker.
Will that be like a drug?
Exactly.
Infinite joy. Is that like better than heroin even?
Hell yeah, absolutely.
Well, I don't want to derail your opening monologue here, but I've seen recently, and over years now, but recently especially, I've seen a lot of these videos, YouTube shorts, Facebook reels, whatever, of these churches where they get crazy, really fucking crazy. I mean, worse than being slain in the spirit. We're talking dancing, gyrating, sprinting back and forth down the aisles, jumping up on the pews, dancing on the pews, like crazy shit. And like, this is such a powerful experience. I want to use this as an object lesson to Christians who don't agree with that sort of thing, because you have that phenomenon in charismatic and Pentecostal churches where they get crazy and then they speak in tongues and all that. But like, they're having such a powerful experience that they claim is from God. But then the other sects of Christianity, which might actually make up the majority in America anyway, they don't agree with that theology. They think these people are crazy, and these people are not actually experiencing God. This is like these people are misled, like heretical type shit. Yet those same people that criticize those experiences, those super powerful experiences, will use their own experience with God, like, oh, I had this intense feeling, or the Spirit of God came over me and I just knew that Jesus had changed me, or that like I was born again. They'll use such a small experience in comparison to prove God exists. And then they'll criticize those people that are dancing in church, and they'll say their experiences are counterfeit. I'm like, if you don't think that's real, an intense experience like that, then how can you possibly know that your little experience is real?
Right.
If those people are deluded, how are you not deluded? Oh, no, you can't be wrong. No, but those people are wrong.
Right.
Somebody's having an authentic experience here, an intense, like almost drug-like experience, but they're totally wrong.
Yep.
But your little one, your good feeling the day you got saved, that proves God's real. It's such hypocrisy.
Or things like finding your keys or whatever, because you prayed, and there's a direct connection between praying and finding your keys.
If you're a Christian and you're going to use personal experience as your argument for God being real, you cannot criticize those people who are having 100 times more powerful experience, but they've got the wrong theology, so they're delusional. They're delusional, but not you.
Right?
Wouldn't it make sense that the more powerful experience being attributed to God would be like even better proof? But no, it's not. Like, I'm a Baptist. I was a Baptist, and like those people were wrong, just straight up wrong. But my experience was totally, verified, authentic. So just a call out on the hypocrisy.
Yep, absolutely.
Anyway, well, carry on.
Well, and it's interesting, man, that you make that connection, because if in fact Christianity does function like a drug, like an addiction, as we've made the case before, if it did actually provide what it promised, wouldn't everybody have the same response? But as it turns out, if it is a placebo, then it's fabricated, and everybody's coming up with a response that they think is best for them. A true drug will produce the same effects on people, right? And that's what a non-placebo actually does. So if your mind is involved in affecting how that drug hits you, then it's going to be different for each person. So you're making a fascinating case. So yeah, another way in which it's clearly demonstrable that it's fabricated, because every denomination has not only different experiences, but different intended experiences. You're actually taught you have to experience the Holy Spirit in order for you to be saved,
Right.
Like that's
the day of Pentecost. Yeah. On the day of Pentecost, the Spirit of God, Spirit of the Lord, the Holy Spirit, whatever you want to label it, like came down upon and inside of those people. And they all together as a group. I mean, if you read that passage, it's wild. It's like, where is that today? Oh, some people claim to have that, but like the majority of Christianity does not. Like Catholics don't ascribe to that. I believe Orthodox don't either. Mainline Protestant doesn't. Most evangelical conservatives in America, the entirety of the Baptists, Lutherans, like none of them like ascribe to that passage. They have to make excuses for that, why that doesn't happen to them today. It's wild. That was like supposed to be the keystone verse or passage right there at Pentecost to prove that like Jesus had left, but the Spirit had come, and it showed itself.
Yep. Absolutely.
And then it was gone. Never to be seen again, apparently.
It seems so. It would seem so. And then you have, according to Paul, you have the hope of Christ's return, the hope of the redemption of the body, the hope one day when that climactic moment happens and Jesus comes out of the sky. And so Christians are supposed to be like anxiously awaiting for this, like excited that when they see the Lord with their eyes coming out of heaven, it's like this great shout will happen. Everybody will be excited. But as it turns out, by and large, most Christians I've ever encountered, actually, I'd say every Christian I've ever encountered, though I've been told it's not true across the board, so I can't say, but for every Christian I've ever encountered, when things like a big hurricane happen or a big earthquake happen near their home or whatever, and that's one of the things that, is preempting the end of Christ, or the return of Christ, but earthquakes will happen everywhere. And so like when that happens in some of these weird areas, like in Maryland, it happened, at my house, my parents' house in Maryland. It was just this little small tremor, a little earthquake, but it was enough to freak them out, man, because they're anticipating that's what's going to happen at the end of time. And so like, rather than being excited and looking out the window for Jesus, there was this great terror that came over that what if the end is here? Oh my goodness, this might be the end. And now they're scared shitless instead of happy. And it's like, if the drug was genuine and not a placebo, then it would genuinely cause you to sustain that excitement when it happened. But it doesn't. It actually causes dread.
Perfect example to lead into my next point. When these things happen, like the rational side of your brain suddenly takes over, because deep down, I've made this case before. This is a controversial opinion, but I've come to hold it, and I'd like to see evidence to the contrary, but it is open to interpretation. It's how I view it. Deep down, people don't have a true belief in these supernatural beings. They can't quite overcome the rational side of their brain interfering and whispering in their ear at all times. This is bullshit. You know it on some level. This is a story. You can't prove this. You're believing in irrational things, and it gnaws at them to the point where they can't hold it at the level of true belief. Like I've said this before many times, but like there are true beliefs we all hold. Like, for example, like if I'm planning on going to the grocery store this afternoon and I have a shopping list, I have a true belief that I'm going to go. Like I'm going to do it. But I don't have the same level of belief when it comes to God and the Bible and the afterlife and all that, because it's an abstract concept. It does not manifest itself in reality in a way that I can get a true belief around that thing. And like a lot of Christians believe in this idea of like God speaking things into existence, creative acts. But if a Christian who believes that God can do that, if they're out walking in the woods someday and like something just pops into existence in front of them out of thin air, they claim that there's a God that can do that, but they would be absolutely terrified. Like the rational part of their brain would take over and be like, no, that doesn't happen. Well, why not? Why not? You have a God that can do anything. You have a God that created the world out of thin air just by speaking into existence, something from nothing. But if you saw something from nothing occur, you'd freak out. So I actually address this briefly in the introduction of my book about why do people get so emotional when they give their testimonies and they talk about Jesus. Now we see this in church all the time when people get up and they talk about how Jesus saved their life. And when they get to that point, they oftentimes break down into tears. And that's never made sense to me. I'm like, why do you feel that almost like heartbreak in a way? I mean, you're crying. It really affects you. What, isn't Jesus real to you and has saved you? Like, why are you mimicking grief? And I think that when they get deep into a story like that, the rational part of their brain is like poking back. And I wonder if they break down in tears and they talk about Jesus because deep down, like something tells them that it's not true. And that makes them sad. I wonder if that's true. It's like when they really get down to it, like Jesus. It's like there's an underlying deep down grief that this belief that I hold so dear, like maybe it's not true, and that hurts in some way. I wonder.
Yeah, well,
because shouldn't you, when you talk about how Jesus saved your life, shouldn't you be happy? Shouldn't you be like portraying that boundless, infinite joy? No, they're all like, oh, Jesus saved my life. And they have tears. Like, are those tears of joy or are those tears of sadness because the rational side of your brain says, this isn't true. This isn't true. I'm sorry. This isn't true. And they're like, oh,
right. Yeah. Well, I wonder if this sort of connects to what you're saying. So there's this other aspect, all related, of course, where Christianity, God, tends to be a replacement addiction for something else. We've talked about this before, like people who are stuck on porn or stuck on drugs or whatever it is.
It's a replacement addiction for everything.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly. So, and one of the reasons I think why it becomes so powerful is because of what think I talked about this in the last episode when I saw on The Last Ship, you know, that analogy that I was talking about, where when you've kind of fucked up your life, when you're kind of like in the trenches, you're kind of low and down, you can't get out of this addiction, whatever it is, it's destroying your marriage, and so you're looking for anything that will give you some semblance of hope that life can be better. And what the message of Christianity does is it offers God as the meaning and purpose behind all of that. None of that was wasted. God's going to use it for good. You did some really bad things, but it's okay. Even though it wasn't okay to do at the time, don't worry. God forgives, and God has a plan and a purpose for your life, without including all of that stuff that you did. He's going to do something wonderful. And now you have meaning, and now you have something to live for. And it's like you get this incredible feeling that, wow, maybe, just maybe, this is what I needed. My marriage might get fixed. Maybe I'll get off drugs. And so it creates this placebo. And so now you start naturally working towards the things that you're told you have to do in order to fix your life. And then you're told, and the reason it actually happened is God's grace. It was always grace whenever you do something good. And when you don't do something good, it's because free will. You know, it's like, what is God's grace just like stop sometimes and let me free will take over? Like, it's really bizarre. But at any rate, he's always getting the credit for the good. So you come in, and so it's always God that is the reason for why your life is getting better. Because let's face it, even as a Christian, he'll accept you as you are, but he won't leave you there. He's going to fix you. He's going to make you better. He's not going to leave you gay. He's going to pray it away. You're going to pray it away. He's going to fix you, right? And so this sort of thing starts to happen. And I see testimonies about that all the freaking time, and it's annoying as shit. But anyhow, so you start working towards the things you're supposed to do that you're told please God and will make your life better. And so, well, obviously, if you start working towards those things, you're moving in a direction. You're going to get those things fixed and made better. And who is the credit? It's God. And that's the deep joy you have, man. God gave you meaning. God gave you purpose. And so it's constantly feeding that into your mind. All of that is fabricated. It's all giving credit to a being that doesn't likely exist.
It's Dumbo's magic feather. If you know what I'm talking about. And for those that don't know the Disney movie, cartoon, whatever, Dumbo the elephant he needs to flap his ears and fly, and he can't do it. And so somebody gives him this feather and says, this is a magic feather. This will allow you to fly. And as long as he holds on to that, he's fine. He flaps his ears and he flies. And then, eventually in the story, he finds out that he didn't actually need it. It was this talisman that gave him the power or gave him the confidence to do it on his own. The problem is that Christians are given that magic feather and they never lose it. And they don't realize that it was them the whole time that did this. They just needed that extra encouragement, or they needed to bootstrap, their own willpower onto something large, or what they felt was larger than themselves. And, that's why we have so many of these testimonies that come out of actual drug addiction. Like, people go to rehab and they get converted in rehab, like my best friend did. And they bootstrap that to give them the power to beat the addiction by giving their life to Jesus, or they give the addiction to Jesus. And then, there's a lot of other psychological placebos going on there too, because then there's like, well, I don't want to let Jesus down, so I won't turn to the drugs, on and on. But, in reality, it was them doing it, because especially for those that find Jesus in rehab, like, but how did you get to rehab in the first place? You had it's this priming bias. Like, you already made the decision that this was the place you needed to be. You needed to beat the drugs. You took the first steps. Like, Jesus didn't drag you to rehab. Like, you went there yourself. So you already were mentally prepared to beat the addiction. And then you're given this. And what I think what people are looking for, like, everybody's looking for something in life. It's very interesting. But what they want most is certainty. And the only thing that they can pursue that's going to offer them actual certainty is going to be some kind of spiritual truth that tells them that this is the ultimate answer. This is what you have been looking for. This is going to give you eternal life. This is your purpose. Ground it in God. God is eternal. God created you. And they love that so much. And what is really going on here is religion is hijacking evolutionary psychology. Why are we never satisfied? Why are we always looking for something in life? It's because we have evolved this search behavior. You need resources to survive. And as soon as you stop pursuing resources, you will stop moving and you will die. You'll starve to death, whatever, you'll waste away. Like, you have to have this motivation, this dopamine that pushes you forward to pursue things in life. We see this happen with people who work like their whole career, and then they retire, and then they go home, and what do? Well, they have nothing to do anymore, so they just sit around, watch TV, and statistically, they die very quickly, a lot of them, because they no longer have that purpose in life that gets them out of the house, and that they go and pursue something, and so they just kind of give up, and like that affects the mortality rate. So we see this pursuit behavior in everyone. No one's satisfied. You can't be. Evolution has designed you not to be satisfied. You will continually pursue resources, whatever it is that those are. But religion comes along, is like, hands you this gift. It's like certainty. This is what you've been looking for. Now, I don't think that stops them from pursuing. Obviously not, because these people, most Christians just phone it in. Like, they go to church every Sunday, they read their Bible, they pray, whatever. But like, the vast majority of their daily life is not Christianity. Like, it's not the thing they are pursuing. They are still doing exactly all of the things they did before they were a Christian. They're
well, yeah, but you'll notice there's this major wave that has come through, where now, if you are building a business, you can build it just like everybody else. But if you do it for the glory of God, now you're building a kingdom business.
I've seen that too.
And so it's like that with everything now. Like, the principles are literally the same. Like, everything you have to do to build your kingdom business is identical to the shit you have to do to build any business.
Right.
But it's kingdom focused. And so now that placebo takes over. And once again, you feel much better about making all this money and being rich and giving to the poor because, well, you have a purpose now for it.
Right.
So it's still a mind fuck. It's still fabrication that makes you think that there's something else that is necessary in your life to just do this.
Yeah, and if your algorithm is engineered that way, you're going to see a lot of that crap, a lot of that marketing tactic bullshit from these Christian business coaches. There's so many of them now, and like, obviously they're scamming people. Like, this is their hook. They're hustlers and what do you call them, grifters that are using religion as a way to get you to buy their product. But it is super popular. Like, it plays into like a lot of the guilt that a lot of these Christian entrepreneurs have, where, yeah, they're already Christians and they're already entrepreneurs, but like, if you're relentlessly pursuing money as a Christian, like, it's going to make you feel bad on some level. A lot of them, I'm sure a lot don't, but they're going to feel like they're doing the wrong thing. They're pursuing the wrong thing. So these hustlers come along and they're like, oh, you can marry this to your religion. And then it's like, now it's cool. Now it's kosher.
Right. Speaking of using religion to sell your product, I want to encourage everybody to check out my Patreon, because if you are a member there, then you can get my book for free, which will actually help you deconvert from all of this mindfuckery. So I hope you will check it out. And if for no other reason, just for the sheer challenge of whether or not this book can actually do what it promises. So I would encourage you to do that. It is still not yet published, but it's getting there. But in the meantime, you can get a pre-version of it that is now, well, free to those who are supporting me regularly. So anyway, check that out. But go ahead.
What makes you different from a Christian con man selling a product based on religion?
Yeah, well, the difference is I'm not telling you what to believe. I'm helping remove a belief that may or may not be true. So on the other side of this book, I'm not telling you what to believe. I'm leaving it to you to build your worldview, and that is a major difference. So it's not another form,
but it is a criticism of hypocrisy that I'm sure you will get hit with at some point by believers. That
sure,
yeah,
I'm sure I will. But the only way to know whether it's true or not is to read the book, and then you can decide for yourself whether the criticisms are accurate or if you actually share those criticisms. So, like anything else, don't just believe what you hear. Check out the product.
But
anyway,
as you and I have talked about earlier this week about, it was somebody else. I was, so, Mark Driscoll, he's a super popular, successful mega church pastor with a whole bunch of books. And I saw an excerpt of one of his sermons a few years back that really pissed me off, because he got up and he said to his church with a straight face that I could be rich tomorrow. I could be super popular tomorrow. I could sell a ton of books tomorrow and get invited to countless lectures all over the world. And all I'd have to do is convert to atheism, and the world would accept me, and I would be infinitely more successful than I am right now. And I'm like,
no, you wouldn't be.
Really? Because atheism does not sell.
Right.
Okay. You and I both wrote books, and we've sold very few copies.
Right.
Okay. And we are doing this podcast for free. Now, we have deconverted from Christianity, and now we're atheist, I guess, amateur content creators, and we're not successful at all. And I have an entire bookshelf filled with books by people that have left the Christian faith and have written books against faith as atheists. And these are books that you will have never heard of before. They didn't hit the mainstream. Not a single one of them is a New York Times bestseller. Like, the culture at large does not want to hear this. We are selling a product that does not sell. You and I are not here for money or fame. We will never be rich, and we will never be famous. That guy, Driscoll, is a millionaire with best-selling books and a megachurch pastor. And for him to actually say that he would be like infinitely more popular if he converted, whatever the hell that means, to atheism, is just a straight up fucking lie of a scumbag manipulator.
Agreed.
It's wild.
So, hey, if you're here, I've seen some comments already in the chat. Call in, hop in the room. The link is in the comments. It's also in the info. We want to talk to you. Tell us why we're wrong, that Christian joy is fabricated. Maybe you can demonstrate to us that the God you believe in is actually real, and your joy isn't fabricated. Maybe you'll convince us, and we can have that deep joy that Christianity promises. Because I used to think I had it, and now I don't. So maybe I never had it. Maybe I thought I did. Come help us out. We'd love for you to hop in the room. While we're waiting for you to come in, let me just let you guys know a couple of quick things. Tomorrow night on the Unravelation Show, the astrology of the Bible with Mark Chiachira. He is going to be talking about how the astrology has actually been a baseline for a lot of the scriptures, if not all of it, for it being written. Quite a fascinating argument. He's got a lot of research he's done. So I would encourage you to check that out tomorrow at 4:30 Eastern on the Unravelation Show. Check that out. It's going to be a lot of fun. Don't miss it. So that's what's coming up there tomorrow. Of course, Richie and I have been continuing our dialogue on Sundays, and that's been getting a lot of views. I'm actually shocked, but it was a really good conversation this past week. I'm really enjoying it. It's at 4 p.m. on Sundays, 4 p.m. Eastern on Sundays. Some of you have seen Richie come on here. He may even show up tonight. He pops in and out from time to time. But he's just such a great guy to talk to, just so friendly, so easy to converse with. So it's the kind of dialogue that allows for these kinds of conversations where you can actually get somewhere, So
anyway. He's the kind of person that we're looking for. We just want to have a conversation. We're not looking for an argument or a debate. We are not debaters. We don't fight with people. We just want to have a conversation, and we'll give you probably most of the time to talk if you've got something to say. Like tonight, if you have had a personal life-changing experience with God or Jesus, tell us what that was like and how that happened, and the exact elements, the specifics of that convinced you that was a genuine experience and was not something that just happened in your head because you really needed that to happen personally.
Yep. And maybe a place to start, if you come on, is to explain to us why you believe you need the product to begin with. I'd be curious to know what convinced you that you are a sinner. What convinced you that you are worthless without God and that you need this being called God. Because let's just say hypothetically a God does exist. What's his purpose? What's his usefulness if you actually don't need him? Like if you can survive without him and he's just an idea that just kind of exists in the etheros, or whatever it's called. Can't think of the word. Ethereal space.
Yeah, ethereal.
Yeah, I was using the wrong. Anyway, so yeah, I mean,
the abstract.
Yeah, he can be an abstract God. Okay, maybe that's a whole different conversation that you'd like to demonstrate. Cool, but I'd be curious as to know what convinced you that you are a sinner in need of a savior, because that's the baseline problem to begin with. Is you were convinced of this, and so now you're finding that you need something that's going to give you hope. So one of the things you were saying earlier, Elliott, was about this. What Christianity does is it replaces that dopamine high in another way, because people are always pursuing something. So, and the pursuit of things are good in some ways, because like you said, you'll just kind of give up and have nothing. You won't do anything if you don't pursue things. I mean, we're kind of built for that. But there are some things that are more damaging and harmful to us than others, because it affects our psyche and affects our bodies in negative ways or whatever. So my opinion isn't to switch addiction to another addiction. If you keep bouncing from addiction to addiction, you're never going to actually conquer your addiction and personality. You got to deal with that at some point and stop bouncing around. That's why I highly recommend to people the Alan Carr method. Alan Carr's easy way to stop smoking, stop drinking, stop drugs, whatever it is. He pretty much deals with all of them except for religion. He died before he probably had a chance to do that, because he was an atheist, believe it or not. But at any rate, that's where my book comes in, and it deals with the religious aspect. But nonetheless, if you are a person that feels like your life is fucked up and from some of these addictions, you don't need to run to Christianity to fix that. You need a method that actually just removes the brainwashing that makes you think you need this product, and you can actually be free. So if that's you, I highly encourage you to check out Alan Carr, ALLENCARR, AlanCarr.com. See what he offers, because everything he offers is 100% money back guarantee if it doesn't work. That's how much he guarantees the product, and how much I do too. It's really incredible. And I'm not paid by them. I'm not a spokesperson for them. There's absolutely no connection to them whatsoever. I'm just telling you, this shit works. And that's how I also know my book works, because it's produced on the same method. But at any rate, so that would be my encouragement. So if you are in Christianity and that's the addiction you got stuck in, you really need help. Like it's a placebo. Like you've come to believe something that you have no good reason to believe. Even if at the end of the day, it turns out your God is real. You didn't get there with good reason. You got there because you got lucky. And that's never a good reason to believe something.
You know, the reason that I think that faith or religion or Jesus or whatever is an addiction, I came to this conclusion after you did, Ellen, actually, after I wrote my book by several years. So it took me years to figure this out. And, you know, I the way I got to it was through politics a couple of years ago, watching the election. And like, I'm not taking a side in politics, but because you can see this from both sides. But in the lead up to a really big election, you see a lot of rhetoric being thrown back and forth, and a lot of facts being thrown back and forth. And it's like, both sides have true facts. They just don't share the same facts. So one side will give a fact, the other will give a fact, back and forth. But, you know, some of these facts are not contestable. They're just a fact. And if you encounter a fact that goes against how you believe, like, wouldn't you care? You should care, right? Because you want to be right. And what I watched was so many people were encountering facts, and they were just like completely dismissing them, not considering them at all, not changing their position at all. And I concluded that, like, these people just don't care about the truth. I'm like, well, why doesn't somebody care about the truth? Especially when it's something very important, like politics or like religion. And, you know, I juxtaposed that against all the conversations that I've had with Christians over the years, where I bring them facts, and it hits a brick wall again and again and again. They go through a bunch of automatic psychological defense mechanisms. And I've actually detailed a whole series of them in my book that I've observed in these people. the first one is just straight up dismissal, like they put their finger in their ears and you can see that it just went right over their head. They don't care. They just block it out. Another one is automatically fighting with you right away, just immediately fighting, but without even comprehending what you say. Another one is mockery. They'll just immediately start to mock you for your position instead of dealing with the things that you say. I'm like, the only conclusion that I can come to is they just don't care about the truth. Because if you do care about the truth, you'll change your position when confronted with facts. Well, why wouldn't someone care about the truth? Well, if you put it in the context of encountering somebody with a drug addiction, if you confront them while they're doing their drugs or while they're pursuing their drugs or looking for their next high, you are going to hit a brick wall. They are not going to listen. They're going to be hostile immediately. Like you're trying to take something away from them, or trying to talk them out of something that they need. They think that they need. And they get very defensive and hostile. And religion fits that bill perfectly. It's like these people need something and they don't want it taken away from them, but they don't care about the truth at the same time. Like it has to be an addiction on some level. It has to be.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No, you're absolutely right.
It's the only hypothesis that balances the equation, because otherwise we would see, and this, if you're a Christian, you can apply everything that I just said. You can apply that to other religions, and it will make perfect sense to you. Why does a Muslim not capitulate to the facts and leave Islam when you hit them with facts about their religion not being true? Why does a Buddhist cling to it against all evidence, or a Hindu? Like, those people are wrong. You're absolutely convinced that they're wrong and that you're right. But when you try to get through to them, you hit a brick wall. Why? It's like they don't care about the truth. Something else is going on there. So what is the difference between a Muslim or a Buddhist or a Hindu being addicted to their special faith and not listening to facts versus a Christian who is engaging in the exact same behavior? Like I struggle to have a conversation with a Christian where I can lay out something that they're unaware of and have them sit there and consider it for a second. I can't get them to consider it for even a second. Like, what, you're acting exactly like a Muslim would be acting in that same circumstance.
Yep.
You're blocking it out.
Yep.
Like, show me that this isn't an addiction.
It's insane, dude. And all of the arguments for the Christian worldview, for Christianity, are exactly the same that every other religion uses. Like there is no apologetic argument that fits Christianity that doesn't fit one of the other ones. None. They're all the same. But each one of them thinks that theirs takes them to their God. And it's because they've been convinced that their God does something wonderful for them. And the other gods can't possibly do this because they're not real. Those gods aren't real. Mine obviously is real because, well, I mean, look what he's done for me. He saved my marriage. He gave me this deep-seated joy, and you see that kind of thing all the time. But there's nothing that sets it apart. They make claims. Well, like the Eastern Orthodox version, we have the historical, the most historical church, and they carried it, and we know it's traced all the way back to Jesus, and they tell us what the Bible says, and we just trust them. And I don't know, man, it's just weird because I'm like, okay, so yours might have the most historical now, but maybe it won't always, and then what are you going to do? or maybe there's other religions that have gone longer. Maybe they just don't have the setup that the Eastern Orthodox Church has.
Yeah.
Like Hinduism is a lot older. It just might not have the political structure or the polity that
right.
Church has.
Well, it's worth noting that every single Christian sect believes the same thing, that their particular theology goes all the way back to the beginning.
Correct.
Like I have Baptist friends who believe that the Baptist denomination is not new. It wasn't invented in the 1800s, like the history books claim. They're like, well, we just called it that as a a bookmark or whatever, as a title, but our theology goes all the way back to the very beginning, a long unbroken chain from the early church to now. I'm like, well, I mean, like you just said, the Eastern Orthodox think that they've got the official church.
Yep.
The Catholics think that they've built their church on the very foundation of Christianity.
Yep.
through the popes. Like Peter was the first pope. Well, does Eastern Orthodox believe Peter was the first pope, or no? They've got a whole different line.
Yeah, it's a whole different line. Well, even as a full preterist, I'll tell you that we believed, or I believed, and they believe that it's actually the most historical position, and you can actually find traces of it. Maybe they didn't call it preterism. That was the official term it received, over with Max King, but prior to that, you can trace it all the way back. And obviously, if you just follow the scriptural text and the time text, Jesus was a futurist, but then he was a preterist too, as soon as his, coming in Jerusalem destruction happened. So every religion, every version of every religion has their belief that their version is traced back the most historical. So
if you're basing your religion on this, if the scripture is your foundation, like, aren't you by default going all the way back to the beginning? I mean, that makes sense to me. Like, I'm basing mine on the Gospels or Paul's writings or what have you, the New Testament scriptures. Where is your source material otherwise?
Right. So Richie will say, because we just had this conversation on Sunday, Richie will say that the church produced the Bible, so tradition supersedes scripture too.
The church are the authors of those books.
What's that?
The church produced the Bible, or the authors of those books produced the Bible?
Well, he would say that they were connected to the most historical church, which would be the Eastern Orthodox Church, and so that church with their writers actually produced the scriptures. I'm not an Eastern Orthodox, so I can't argue for it very well. It was just something along those lines where the church structure superseded the scriptures themselves. Yeah.
Luke was Eastern Orthodox, was part of a church. That's an extraordinary statement.
Yeah, where's Richie, man? We need Richie. Richie, come on, man. Nobody's calling in tonight, so we need you. Apparently, Christians don't disagree that joy is fabricated. So I guess we're not going to have anybody to defend the Christian joy. But what we can do? Here's something interesting I would like to talk about is maybe you are a ex-Christian, whether you call yourself an atheist or not is irrelevant, but you're no longer believing that a God exists or that you have, that you're a Christian, whatever. And you might be curious. You might even remember this feeling of joy that you had, you might even call it contentment, like a deep contentment, right? That you were supposed to have all the time. And you were told you had it if you were in Jesus. And so you might be thinking, yeah, that's right, I remember that. And maybe you've never even really thought much about what happened afterwards, whether or not you still have that same contentment or not. Because I got to tell you, like, I never lost it or gained it as a Christian. Like, I've just always kind of been this content person, except for the, few years of depression I went through. But I've always been this fairly content person. Like, life doesn't just really get me down. Like, sure, I have hard days and sometimes I have happier moments and sadder moments. Brave, we see you in the background. We'll bring you up in just a second, Meddy. So yeah, it's nothing changed in regards to my contentment, my deep-seated joy. I literally remember about myself being exactly the same as I am now. And I don't need a God for it. Strangely, when I was a Christian, I was told that's the only reason I had this contentment. And now I'm like, that's interesting. So it turns out atheists do have the same contentment Christians do. And I also find atheist funerals, they have the same amount of emotion as the Christian funerals, except the Christian ones, they tend to suppress it more because they're supposed to be happy or believe they're happy in some way that atheists aren't. So anyway, that's an interesting thing to me, is that you clearly can have the same exact personality. And that it really does come down to personality in a lot of ways. Like, am I a content person or am I not? Like,
right. Yeah.
Anyway, Brave, welcome to the show. How are you tonight?
I'm doing fine. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. What would you like to talk about?
I don't know you two guys, so I don't know really everything you guys talk about. I just saw you on the live feed, but you were talking about the Eastern Orthodox, and my background is Reformed Baptist, 32 years, but then I had a son pass away, which led me into reading church history to see what the early Christians believed about what happens to babies. And that's what persuaded me out of Reformed theology. And with my studies of church history, I would say I do agree more with the East whenever it comes to the different Christian sects. So I popped on to see if I could answer some of the questions you had about that.
I appreciate that. What can you just explain what some of those differences are that you embraced that are significantly different that you really found are so now you're Eastern Orthodox, right? Am I understanding that correctly?
No, I'm not. I'm not technically Eastern Orthodox. Everybody on both sides of my family are Reformed Baptist. Even my wife, she's not Reformed Baptist, but she's a Protestant. Her dad's a pastor, and so going from that your whole life to jumping into something else, especially whenever you have 5 kids, jumping into something like that with someone who was not raised in it, that's a big jump, and you don't just do something like that. My wife is a psychologist, child psychologist. She deals with autistic children, but also she does clinical psychology for adults. And so I would say we are not the emotional, sensational type of Christians. My dad is Democratic, doesn't matter who, vote blue. And my mom was only red. They got her divorced. So I was in the middle of why are there these issues? And my dad was always kind of a prove it guy. He doesn't believe it unless he learns it for himself. And I kind of got that. So anyway, I'm not a psychologist. I was an athlete growing up, but now I'm married to one. And then my mother-in-law is a neuropsychologist. So I'm around smart people. Father-in-law's an engineer, just really smart people. So the things that they talk about and I've learned from her, because being raised in the 80s as an athlete, it was just be tough. It's fight through it. If you get down, just get up. Not the kind of the ways they teach people how to get through things. And we even have some autistic children ourselves. And I can see that my way of training them, which is how I was raised, would not help them. There's a better way to do it. And I've had to learn things like that. And I would say whenever it comes to Eastern Orthodoxy, the very first question I was given that I wanted to ask you guys was, if I was to ask you what is a tree, how would you answer that? And I'm not joking, just what is a tree? What would you tell me?
Well, there's a lot of different answers that a person could give. I mean, you can describe the attributes of the tree, what it's made out of, how it functions, how it comes to be. I don't know. I don't know what answer. Do you have an answer that you're looking for?
I'm looking for how you answer the question.
I suppose if you're asking me personally, without getting into the philosophy of, there's so many ways you could answer. Just off the top of my head, when you ask it, I'm like, it's a thing that's got this brown round tube that goes into the ground, and the ground waters it, and it produces these things called leaves, and they're green.
Right.
That's the way I would describe a tree.
I could say it's a biological organism that springs from the dirt. I could define it the way it's defined in biology or science.
Yeah. So basically, you could lead me maybe to a book of science that would give me all the facts about a tree.
You wouldn't have to be a
Right,
book.
photosynthesis, everything about a tree. Okay, and so that answer tells me that the way you think is Western mindset. All three of us have been trained by this Western mentality. Now, if you ask a person in the East, what is a tree? They'll answer in this kind of way. They'll say, whenever I was growing up, I had a tree in my yard, and we had some neighbors that moved in, and they had a daughter. So I went and got a rope and a tire and put a swing in that tree so she and I can play. And then later on, she and I got married. We got married into that tree. And then we eventually had kids, and those kids played around that tree. And then eventually I died, and my family buried me under that tree. And so I don't give you any facts about what a tree is, really. I just give you my experience with that tree. And that's what Orthodox is.
Does that help you know what a tree is?
No, the point is
I'm not sorry. I'm not trying to interrupt you, but like,
yeah,
if your question was what is a tree, and they give you a different answer,
right?
How does that help you understand what a tree is?
Right. So I'm not asking you like a scientific question. I'm just saying you the way they think whenever it comes to orthodoxy and how they view God. They view God as everything is about their experience with God. In the West, it's all about knowledge, facts, dogma, debates. Okay, so it's all about A to Z. I need to know every single thing about God. That's the Western mindset when it comes to scholasticism. The East, though, is going to be your experience with God, not necessarily A to Z. Everything has to be correct. And so whenever it comes to you reading church history, as a Calvinist, whenever I read church history, I was persuaded out of it because nothing I believed was in church history. Nothing. So any of the groups that you mentioned, a Baptist group, how they say our group leads back like to the apostles, false. Any atheist, you don't have to be a Christian who reads church history. You can know what Christians believe because we have in history what we believe. We have in history where the heretics are. We have the origins of where things popped up. You know what they believe, what they didn't believe. We have the people who fought against those people. We know how we have our Bible. We know who, like Polycarp going against Marcion. We know Pamphilus who had his library with 30,000 manuscripts, and then Eusebius after him. So we know if we didn't have those guys, we wouldn't have half of our church history or half of our fathers that are in our history. Well, so we know about the Gnostics. We know about the good and the bad. And so you can go through history and say, this is what Christianity is. This is what they believe universally. This is what is heresy. This is where the schism was in the 4th century. This is where the schism was in 1054. This is when the Reformation is. And you can know in the beginning, there was one church set up. And then you go through history and you start seeing differences after, Rome comes into, like Constantine, after when Christianity, kind of like the religion of Rome. Whenever the politics comes into the church, you start seeing changes in the church. You start seeing differences when it comes to the leaders. You start seeing a difference in the West and the East, and how some of the bishops were believing over here compared to over in France or Egypt or whatever. And as you keep going on, you have these separation until you have the schism between the East and the West over certain beliefs until today. But we can all look back and see what we believed. But I can tell you what the Christians actually believed about redemption, right? What they actually taught about what joy is, why Jesus came, and what we are taught in America is not what they believed in history. So all your issues with Christians, especially Protestant Catholics in America, who either don't read their Bible, they skip over church history, and it's a man with their Bible, whatever their opinion is, whatever they think the Bible is saying, that's what they come up with, and they start their denomination or whatever. That is not Orthodox Christianity.
No, and I would not think that it is Orthodox Christianity. I mean, obviously, it's going to be a totally different belief system. Like what we do in the West with mainline Protestantism is they would say they don't listen to men who are creating their own doctrines. They go to the source material, and that's where they get their theology from. And I assume that's where the church fathers were getting their theology from, or were they making it up on their own?
No. So the church never believed in sola scriptura, east or west. Sola scriptura only came with the Protestants.
Right.
So there was
where do they get their facts about reality, about God? Are they making it up themselves?
Are you talking about the Protestants?
No, the church.
Okay, so the church, you have Jesus who comes and he passes on traditions to his apostles. And those apostles pass on those traditions to their bishops, and it goes down like that. And so whenever it comes to what is the Bible, for example, the early church, well, always in the East.
Hang on. Let's go back, because Elliott asked you a very specific question, and I don't feel like you answered that question.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Can you ask it one more time then, please?
Elliott, ask it again.
If you're not using the Bible as your source for your theology, and you're getting it from the church, where's the church getting it? Like, would it be fair to say you don't require or need the Bible as long as you have the church?
So we do believe that the Bible, or the teachings in the Bible, are from God. But the church never believed that the Bible was the sole authority or the highest authority. So the reason why we have the church is the vehicle to teach what God's truth is. Okay, and the Bible can do that, but the Bible was never the sole authority to do that.
So I'm more concerned about the other question you asked, Elliott, which was
hold on, Ellen, real fast. Therefore, my problem with Christianity in America, Protestant Western Christianity, is going to be the exact same problem that I have with the Orthodox Church. I believe they're all making it up, whether it's the church and church tradition or whether it's the Bible. Like, I have no reason to believe any of it is true. So my problem is going to be the same with both. Okay. I just don't believe the stories.
Which stories?
Any story that claims to have spiritual truth or truth about God. I don't believe what people tell me, whether it's the church saying it through tradition or whether it's the scripture. My problem is the same. I reject it categorically.
Okay, right, so you agree that I'm sorry.
The only reason you believe that a God exists is because the church told you so.
Did they make it? That's not the only reason. I've been persuaded by, I would say, my experiences and my diving into what is true.
What can we go over one of these experiences?
Sure. So,
what I understood you say earlier was that the object of the experience isn't important to describe or to know is true or exists. Just your experience surrounding what you think it is exists. So, I mean, my question will be, after you go over one of these experiences, is experience a reliable method to truth? Because it sounds like everybody can have different experiences, and the object that surrounds that experience may not even exist because you haven't put forth any effort to observe whether it exists or not. You're just basing it on your experiences.
Right. So, like apologists, when they give a defense for whatever they're defending, whether it's Islam or atheism or whatever it is, you have to understand what other people believe, right, before you can go against it. Otherwise, you're just straw manning people and you don't understand where they're coming from. And so I've had to do this also, when it comes to Islam, Mormonism, especially the Christian beliefs, Presbyterian, Calvinist, Baptist, Catholic, Orthodox, all those kinds of things, like testing all of them, because I don't want to be in error.
But demonstrating that all of them are false doesn't demonstrate that yours is true.
Well, I have to test that mine is true also.
Well, exactly.
So the Bible literally says to to test it to see whether you're even in the faith, to test all things.
Right. So I don't care where all the other ones are wrong. That's not my concern. I'm curious with the Eastern Orthodox. Like, can you explain why that one is true using experiences?
Okay, well, theologically, I think it's more true. My experience when it comes to God, I believed in God before I even knew about what the East taught.
That's what I want to know is show me God through your experiences.
So, I've had cancer. That's whenever, I was raised in a Christian home. So I was raised believing, like, being taught in God is real, even though my dad's side of the family is like, whatever makes you happy kind of idea. But I was raised being taught God was real. My mom had me in a Christian school before I went to public school because of basketball. But when I was 11 years old, I had cancer, had cholesteatoma or cholestoma in my left ear. I had a tumor on my middle bone, which you have 3 bones that vibrate off each other. And they said, you're not going to be able to hear once we take this bone out and this tumor. And I grew up with a kind of a speech problem a little bit because I couldn't hear. I couldn't hear myself. And then after that surgery, I was able to hear better than I was even without the equipment that I need. And I understand people can, the body is amazing and it can do things too. And doctors are amazing also. But that was one thing that was like, well, that's pretty awesome that I can still hear in that ear when I have all these doctors telling me I'm not going to be able to hear because I need, the parts. And then I had cancer when I was 15, had level 4 cancer, renal cell carcinoma. I had a tumor the size of a 7-month premature baby. It completely took over my left kidney, which they had to remove. They had to remove my 11th rib. I'm from Houston, which has the best cancer centers in America. And over 14 doctors telling me I was going to die. I was in a Make-A-Wish Foundation. I was in Texas Children. Basically, they even said, once I have surgery and they remove the kidney, it's not going to matter anyway because the cancer is in my blood. It's just going to spread through everywhere. And that's the point of really Make-A-Wish because, months or however later, you're dead. And I was a counselor for 3 years in Texas Children around families dealing with that. But I had my surgery. My cancer went away. I never had to take chemotherapy. Even though I constantly came back and I was helping them for 3 years and I had to do the things that go into remission. And so I went from stage 4 cancer, all these doctors telling me I'm going to die, even if they have to give me the worst case scenario because they are doctors, I still, because I was in cancer for biology, I had to document everything. I have all the tools that they used. I have all the paperwork that they talked about. I have everything documented from what they said was going to happen to it didn't happen. I don't have cancer anymore. And so that really got me thinking about life and death. That was a big moment for me. My whole life was basketball, 100%, all year long basketball. That's all I did. And I kind of got held back for the next year when it came to varsity because of that. Because, I have a scar that goes from my left side all the way across my stomach, 40 staples, looks like a shark, bit me. And so I had to get my way back into the game. But while my school wouldn't let me do that, I was put on a United States kind of charity team, not really missionary team because it wasn't really religious, but like a United States goodwill team. I don't know what you want to call it. But we got sent to Panama. I stayed a month with the San Blas Islands with the Kuna Indians, and we built some buildings there. We built some basketball courts there. All we lived off of was whatever they gave us, which was like beans and rice the whole time, except for our last day. And there were missionaries that went there. I don't know their background. I think they were Baptist, but evangelical. But the Kuna Indians, what they have to believe, like the chiefs have to believe to be the chiefs, the things they believe in whenever it comes to idols, how they don't believe the animals will hurt the chiefs and things like that. For 200 of them who had never heard the gospel, and then 3 chiefs to be persuaded, that really did something to me too. Because I was like, yeah, I see it in America all the time because we have churches everywhere. And we used to go to church on Wednesdays just to play basketball, not really just to go to church. But to see that in Panama with Kuna Indians who don't know anything about Jesus and they know their traditions, for them to be converted really, really touched me. And so that's what really got me into, what do I even believe besides what my parents just taught me growing up? That's really all I had. All I had was whatever my parents and my pastors taught me.
So
go ahead. I'm sorry.
It sounds like you're going to have quite a few more possibly witnessing miracles. Would it be fair to say that you've had a rough life and a lot of life-threatening situations? You've been through a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And through these things, you've miraculously survived, and you have attributed this to maybe God's hand in your life, and that's why you believe? Or does that form the basis of your belief, basis of your experience?
I think my experience is that I had amazing doctors who scientifically knew what they were doing, and I don't discredit their learning and their schooling or how the body can adapt and adjust to things. Okay. But based off of all these people, what they're telling me, and then my cancer going away, I don't mean like over years. I mean, it's not in my blood anymore. Like whenever it goes to level 4 to it's not even in me anymore. That was, how did that happen? You know what I mean?
So how do you distinguish between an unexplainable occurrence? How do you distinguish between the natural and the supernatural causing that unexplainable occurrence?
Like, how do I know it's God?
How do you know it's God and not natural? Like, how do you distinguish the two? Because you said, how do you explain that, right? Or whatever phrase you. So clearly it's unexplainable, or at least not.
Sure.
You don't know the explanation yet. So you had been raised believing in God, and do you think that maybe that influenced your trigger to say, hey, this seems supernatural? But I'm curious how you distinguish the two and how you determined that it was supernatural and not an unexplainable natural thing.
Well, I think as a 15-year-old, I have no idea. I just think, like I said, scientifically, they did an amazing job. But that experience was something that persuaded me to study Christianity more. It's what led me into diving into finding out.
Sure. So my question is, does that experience then and the motivation that it caused in you to start studying and be a Christian, is that a good way to determine that God exists?
I mean, as a Christian, I believe that we can be deceived. I believe you can be healed, and that doesn't mean God is the one who did it.
Let me try something else. Let me ask the question a slightly different way. Let's say that hypothetically you could live your life over again, and none of those things happened to you. You didn't get cancer. All the negative things that you might not have an explanation for why you're healed. Let's say none of that happened. You were just a regular guy, lived a normal life, but nothing else changed. Would you still today be a Christian? Like, is
most likely
foundation, or is the foundation of your belief something else? Like we're trying to find out like what exactly it is that makes you a Christian. So is it
No,
experience?
I'm a Christian because I did my study, and I believe the most reasonable thing to believe in is God. And I think the most, like, you believe Jesus was a real person?
So hold on before you go there. So the experience then had nothing to do with your conviction that God exists and Christianity.
No, it definitely had I think God uses experiences in our life to draw him to him. Like Acts 17 says, he has pre-appointed everyone's times that you may grope after him and find him.
But you said
he's near to all of us.
You said in the hypothetical, if none of that happened, you would still be a Christian.
I said most likely I would, just because of how I research.
Like, right. So the experience.
I have to come to a conclusion. I have to come to a conclusion of something. I can't just leave something open-ended. Like I need an answer.
Okay. So you're a person who answer. You need to have an answer. Okay.
I have to.
So do you think just picking an answer is a reliable way to truth?
I think I believe no one knows anything as they ought to know yet.
Well, that may be true.
Even as a Christian, so I hold that as my own belief in everything. Even whenever it comes to what I believe about Christianity, I know I don't know anything yet as I ought to know it. I know I can be persuaded because I was persuaded out of Reformed theology. And if you know anything about Calvinism and election,
I was one.
It's like everyone else are zombies and you're the elect, and it's like you don't understand this because you're not the elect. And I was persuaded out of that kind of mentality. So I know people can be persuaded by information.
Well, like now everybody else is wrong because they're not Eastern Orthodox. So it's the same thing. You just switch churches.
Hypothetically, again, does that mean that you could technically be persuaded to not be religious at all or to become an atheist? Or have you locked down so much in your belief from everything that you know that's impossible?
Well, whatever I am, I'm 100%. And so it would have to take something.
So you can no longer be persuaded?
No, I didn't say that. I would just say it would have to take something, amazing to persuade me out of what I am. Because if I'm in something, I'm in 100%. Like whenever it comes to, I'm married to my wife, I'm 100% faithful to my wife.
Well, saying 100% kind of implies that you're 100% there, which means you're not going to change. I mean, I think 99% might leave some wiggle room for persuasion.
Not in that specific. I guess I shouldn't use that example, but I'm just saying whenever it comes to like, if you're going to be married to a woman, you're supposed to be faithful to your wife. You're not supposed to be cheating on her. You're not supposed to be looking at other people. And even as a Christians, we're not even supposed to lust in our mind. And I'm saying with that kind of mentality, that's how I am. I'm 100% faithful to her. My eyes are hers. Even if she dies, I wouldn't remarry. So I've made a vow to one woman.
Would it be safe to say that so long as your ideals and desires align and you continue together as you are now and nothing changes, you're going to be 100% committed to her? Is that fair to say?
No, I would be 100. I would be 100% committed to her no matter what.
So you're a prophet, because I would have said the same thing with my first wife. Like,
no, I've made a vow to her.
So did I. And I'm not saying that the vow isn't important. I'm saying
it's like when it comes to cursing. I haven't cursed since I was 15 because I made a vow within my own heart. I'm not going to curse anymore. That's just something. That's just how I am.
But the point is that.
Plus, I have kids. So I wouldn't remarry just because it's just personal beliefs. But whenever it comes to orthodoxy, I would say when it comes to Christianity, Eastern Orthodoxy is the closest thing you're going to find to historical Christianity.
Okay,
that's what I can say about them without a bias, because I'm not technically Orthodox, and I'm coming from the outside looking into the church.
And to me, as an ex-Christian, now an atheist, like I have no problem with that statement. Like I see all the denominations as technically equal if I'm correct and it's all based on fiction. So I have no problem saying you got the correct version of Christianity or the correct church. I got no problem just admitting that for the sake of argument. But you did previously say that you studied your way in to Christianity after you had your experiences. You did the due diligence to determine whether it was true, right? That'd be a safe statement to make. So if you have to have an answer and you are looking for the truth, I'm curious what actions you took to try to look at the flip side to that and study the arguments or the evidence against it. If you're doing your due diligence, wouldn't it make sense to also try to falsify it through some kind of method? Did you do that as well?
Yes, of course.
What did your process look like for that?
Okay, so basically, when the first thing I had to do, it had to do with once I realized that Calvinism was not in church history, I had to separate myself from that. Okay, I had to be honest with myself and say I don't
mean Calvinism, or I don't mean the.
I know, but that was the first thing to get me out of it, though, was to test my own beliefs, and I'm just saying that.
Have you ever tried to disprove Christianity itself?
Yes.
And
if I speak to a Muslim, I have to look at their arguments, and I have to say I have to have an answer for all these things that they're asking. If there's an atheist person, I have to take all the questions that you have, even if I don't have an answer for you right now. I take them home with me, and I'm like, I have to have an answer for this. Like, if what you believe is true, it should be able to hold up to scrutiny.
I mean, before you became a Christian, like while you were studying it, did you at that point did you study the arguments?
I've always been a Christian. I was born into Christianity.
Okay, do you see maybe why that could be a problem? If there's never been a time you weren't a Christian, maybe you should then try to disprove it. I mean,
no, I have though.
How could you have used the rational process to become a Christian if you've always been one?
Okay, so for example, like whenever you're in school and you're taking like apologetics, and we might say like, what do you believe about this topic? Oh, I don't believe you can drink. And the other person says, I do believe you can drink. And then the teacher says, okay, well, you who believe you can drink, you have to prove that it's okay, like, not to drink. You have to prove it. So you have to take the other side of it. And you understand what I'm saying? So I have to go from everyone else's side and try to prove Christianity wrong. And from doing that, I find that Christianity is the most reasonable thing to believe in.
But you were doing that from a point of belief, though, right? I mean, you were already one. So
I can't help that everyone lives based off of what they believe. I couldn't have what I was already persuaded with, but I can still test my beliefs.
I think the point that Elliott's making, at least if it's not, it's the point I'm making. It doesn't demonstrate that your version of Christianity or that Christianity in general is true just because compared to other religions it's more true, or it seems more true, or other ones are wrong. That still doesn't make Christianity true. So saying, well, I always have to give answers to everyone else and theirs is always wrong, that's not an answer to the question, have you falsified Christianity? Have you falsified the existence of God? Forget what you've done with other religions. We're just asking you strictly based on your beliefs alone.
I'm telling you, I've done that.
Okay, and what was your process? Tell me how you sought to falsify the existence of God.
Okay, so if we believe Jesus is God, I had to go through history and see, was he even a person? So I had to go like through archaeology or atheism to even test that he was even actually a historical figure, right?
Okay.
If he's not a historical figure, then my faith is nothing.
True. So we'll grant you he's a historical person, no problem.
Right. Right. So I learned that all the scholars, first century scholars, agree that he was a person. That is not the debate. The debate is, did he rise from the dead? That's the debate. And when it comes to Christianity, if he did not rise from the debate, there is no Christianity. Okay, so it's literally what the Bible says.
That's the problem. So how did you falsify? How did you seek to falsify the resurrection of Christ?
So I have to go through the people in the first century. Whenever it came to them, like how do I know Jesus was a person? The sources that are outside the Bible, besides just Christians talking about it. Okay, so either like Roman people or whoever that are talking about Jesus. Okay, and then I have to once I was persuaded, even by atheists, he was a person. Then I have to go to the next thing about whenever it came to the beliefs, I guess. And we have the disciples of the apostles. They're real people. We have their letters.
Let me rewind real fast. Okay.
Yes, sir.
You said the first thing you had to do is verify that Jesus was a real person, and so you believe you've sufficiently verified that he was, but that right there is in contention as well, because I'm not necessarily convinced that he was a real person. So to falsify whether Jesus was a real person, you would also have to look at the counter arguments for why some people believe that he's not. So did you look at that?
Yes, but even the atheist scholars, when it comes to the first century, even they agree he was a real person.
Yeah, so I would take issue with that, but there have been like multiple books written by scholars, New Testament scholars, secular scholars that have have built a logical case that Jesus was in fact not a person. So my question to you is, have you read any of that material?
Well, I mean, like Bart Ehrman.
I'm not talking about Bart Ehrman.
I'm just saying people like him. He's not a Christian anymore, but he's a first century scholar. So I haven't
people like Robert Price and Dr. Richard Carrier. Are you familiar with their work?
I've heard of Carrier before.
If I was doing my due diligence trying to determine whether Jesus was a real person, I would go to the scholars that are making the case that he's not, and I would read what they have to say to do my due diligence. So my question is, did you go that far to do your due diligence, or did you just listen to Bart Ehrman give you the thumbs up?
No, it wasn't just him. It was other. I can't tell you their names off the top of my head, but at the time, this is close when I was 20 years old, so I'm 45 now. But I was convinced that, because these are things they were bringing up, and whenever it comes to antiquity, they were just like, Jesus is one of he's all the history that we have of people in the world. Jesus is the most. There's the most evidence for him, right? And these are on both sides saying there's Christians and the other side, and I think that's what persuaded me to move on to, is Christianity reasonable?
That's where you and I would disagree, because I'm familiar with the counter arguments by other scholars. And it's not unanimous. In fact, the further we go, the more scholars are dropping off from that belief, and it is a belief that Jesus was a real person, because it's not just enough for a scholar to give you the thumbs up and say, hey, yes, he was. I'm going to affirm he's a real person. They actually have to make the arguments for why they believe that. It's not just consensus is based on evidence and argument, not just based on, hey, trust me, bro. So if I were to falsify,
I don't believe in a blind faith. I believe in a reasonable faith. So
right.
I mean, there's documents that say he died under Pilate. We have letters that say John took care of his mother, and we have the letters of John's disciples who knew John, literally met the mother of the Lord. We know people who know the brothers of the Lord, and which were real people.
Yeah, I would contest.
You don't believe those are real people either?
I would contest everything you're saying, that what we have. I don't believe that we do. Like the brother of the Lord comes out of Scripture, and that one passage, that one verse is contested about what that actually means.
No, the brother of the Lord actually comes from the church fathers too.
Which one?
Irenaeus talks about it.
And that's where we have a problem, is the gap is so long. Irenaeus was not a contemporary of Jesus. He wasn't a contemporary of the apostles. Like
Irenaeus, he was a disciple of Polycarp, and Polycarp was a disciple of John.
Yeah, see, we're going generations down the road to get verification that Jesus was a real person. That, for me, that's a problem.
Okay, what about Ignatius?
Same
First
problem.
century. Why?
He was not a contemporary. See, everything we have to prove that Jesus was real outside of the Bible does not come from contemporaries. There's a big gap. There's a full generation, at least a full generation gap before we have people like saying, "Trust me, bro."
Can you tell me what you mean by contemporary?
People that lived during Jesus' life, or
eyewitness
of the apostles.
Yeah, like John.
Right.
He was an eyewitness. He wrote his letters. He wrote his letters in the 90s.
I don't believe those are from John, and I have reasons for that. I'm just saying that if you're going to do your due diligence, you should, if you want to be a reasonable person, read what the scholars who contest Jesus' existence, read what they have to say. So if you haven't necessarily read,
how do we know that the four Gospels are what we go by?
church tradition, that's not enough.
Who told us that?
Well, the Gospels are technically anonymous, and they're written in the third person.
Who told us? Who wrote them?
The church.
No, not just the church. One person.
Yeah, one person. And I'm not, and he doesn't say why he thinks that. And everybody else quoted him. That is a trust me, bro situation. If he cannot show his work and tell me why he believes that, and I can't question him, he's long gone. Like, I have a problem with the chain of custody of the claims, and they are claims because he doesn't present evidence.
Who is he going against whenever he talks about it?
What do you mean?
Okay, so Polycarp is going against Marcion. Marcion is the one who put together the Bible first. That wasn't a church issue. He put together his own Bible, and Polycarp went against him and said, "No, this is what actually the church believes." So he's naming the four Gospels instead of all these Gnostic Gospels. He says, "No, we only go by these four."
It's just claims. He doesn't present his evidence why he believes that. Like, he doesn't show his work. It becomes this sort of a advanced ancient game of telephone with it.
It's not telephone.
It's a trust me, bro situation. Like, it's just claims.
No, it's not. No, it's not. They actually.
Does he show his
work? They had scripture. They had scripture. They had scriptures during that time.
The same ones we have now. Yeah.
No. I'm saying they had the scriptures during that time.
Yeah,
scriptures are done in the. No, the manuscripts we have now only go back to 325. We don't have anything before that. We don't have any autographs now.
Well, doesn't that
I'm confused.
Wouldn't that even make your trust in this whole Bible even worse?
No,
we don't even have the autographs. So how do you know that what we have is actually what was actually ever written by the original authors anyway?
Because we have Polycarp who went against him. We have Pamphilus who had 30,000 manuscripts in his library, who diligently wrote everything down correctly, made sure everything was not written down incorrectly. He made sure of that and had a team of people make sure that happened. And those things.
What century are you talking about? When?
Pamphilus was in the 3rd century.
The 3rd century, and he had how many manuscripts?
30,000.
So he had more manuscripts at that time in his possession more than we have now total? Yes. And what? We're supposed to just trust that's true? What happened to him?
So he had Origen's Hexapla, plus he had the Septuagint, and he had the Hebrew text. So he took the Hexapla. You know what that is?
How does 30,000 manuscripts in the what, 3rd century?
Mm-hmm.
30,000 manuscripts. Why is this, in all my study and all my reading, this is the very first time I'm hearing anything about this.
Yeah, look up Pamphilus of Caesarea.
30,000. How does that even physically possible in the 3rd century?
Because he wrote them all down. Him and his scriptorium wrote the manuscripts down. That's all they did diligently. Even whenever he was sent to prison, he was constantly copying. And that's what got passed down to Eusebius. And Constantine ordered Eusebius for 50 Bibles. And all the church history, not all of it, but most of the church history comes from that library. What we know of the church fathers comes from that library.
And those manuscripts were of what?
Can we just pause for a moment here, because all this is important and interesting and fun, but the issue goes much deeper than how many manuscripts we have, how many people said "trust me, bro," how many documentations there are that show that, you know, even that they have the actual manuscripts of whatever was originally written. The greater question is, how can we possibly know that anything that was written in the Bible is true?
Are you talking about the facts in the Bible?
I'm talking about anything, like anything that is written about. Like, how do we know that every story in the Bible wasn't manufactured?
I mean, there's the Bible is literature, so it has poetry and has things like that. So it wasn't written as a scientific book or necessarily like a historical book.
That's irrelevant to my question.
Let's just stick with the gospel. Stick with the 4 gospels.
I'm just saying the point of it though is, like, whenever they're writing things, we have archaeologists who say yes, there was a Nineveh. I mean, yes, there was a Jerusalem. Yes, there were Philistines. Yes, they were. We have money. We have coins. We have manuscripts.
I know. Spider-Man spun webs in New York, but that doesn't mean Spider-Man's real. Like, you can have locations, because that's what you do when you're telling fiction stories. You place it in real locations, so it makes the story more reasonable and more real. But the question isn't, are there locations in the Bible that they use? I'm asking you, how do you know that the whole thing wasn't just manufactured?
Why would it be manufactured?
A lot of reasons. Because somebody thought it was a cool story. Because people are sometimes wrong. They write things that they're incorrect about. Because they wanted to control people. I mean, because
the Jews were looking for a Messiah during that time, and there were a lot of false messiahs. There were a lot of stories, and there was a lot of prophecy, and it was the Roman Empire taking over Jerusalem was an apocalyptic event for them. And so it's not crazy to think that there could have been a guy, maybe by the name Jesus, maybe by a different name, that was a teacher and a prophet who was maybe executed by the Romans, and people wrote stories about him. And the 4 gospels could very well be Greek, because they are written in Greek literature about a story. And then people read this and they loved it and they ran with it and they built an entire religion around it. Like, why is that crazy? Why do the 4 gospels have to be real accounts?
So the Messiah they were looking for, the Jews were looking for a Messiah that was going to be a king, right? To rule over their enemies. In the Gospels, it says that they wanted to make Jesus a king over them. And what did Jesus do? Did he allow them to make him a king?
No, he rejected their offer.
Exactly. So is he trying to be someone who was popular in his story?
I don't see how this is relevant to the question. How do you know that it's true is the question we're asking. It's not, is it a good story? Does it fit the narrative? Does the whole thing work? All that's great, but it doesn't make it a true story. And I'm asking you how you can know. Let me approach get us to this exact spot from a different angle. Have you ever seen a resurrection?
No.
Neither have I. Neither has anyone, because resurrections don't actually happen.
Well, that's not true.
Well, it is true, because there's never been a scientifically verified miracle. Have you ever seen a scientifically verified?
Okay, when it comes to a resurrection, what do you mean? Because I was offline for 3 minutes, so would you consider that a resurrection?
Were you dead?
Or do you mean someone who was buried and then
Were you
rose from the
dead or
dead?
were you dead? I'm asking an obvious question.
No, I was offline. I was offline for 3 minutes, which is
Were
documented.
you dead or were you
In the same
flatline?
way, in the same way they
Flatline,
claim
3 minutes.
Jesus, in the same way they claim Jesus resurrected.
That's what I'm asking you. Like, how far do you need it to go?
In the same way that Jesus circumstances, is there ever been a resurrection in those circumstances? The guy's been dead and buried for 3 days. We ever seen?
Yeah, people have. I have never seen it with my eyes, no.
Well, and
but I've read stories in history, and that's not true because people have said they have.
Okay, so once again, we're just reading stories, and you're just saying, "Well, there are people who have said it." Trust me, bro. The point is, we can't verify a resurrection, and so the real question is, if you're going to seek to falsify before you believe, you have to bring that evidence into the story and say, "All right, before I just leap to believe that a guy rose from the dead, maybe I should have good reason to actually believe resurrections even happen."
No, you don't have to have science. Historical science is not the same as regular science, where you can put it in a laboratory and redo it.
Correct. That's why it's a problem. That is exactly why it's a problem. Why we shouldn't believe things like that from history.
That's not true because it's still reasonable to believe that there was a Caesar.
Okay.
Because we have statues, we have money, we have stories.
You're right.
Yes, because you're talking about.
Do you believe in Caesar? Do you believe in Caesar?
Hold on. Herodotus is widely regarded as the first ancient historian. He wrote about the Greek wars, the Punic Wars, all that. Okay, we use him as our window into the past. Historians generally trust his word because that's all we have. Okay. However, Herodotus also recounts miraculous events of the gods intervening, like supernatural stuff. Historians do not believe that those events actually happened. So when it comes to evaluating history, you have to evaluate it in a probability format of what's most likely to have happened. And just as historians might believe what Herodotus writes about the Greek wars, they don't believe the miraculous events. And I don't think anybody alive today does either. But when it comes to the Bible, suddenly now we can make the opposite case.
Right. Abraham Lincoln was real. I have no reason to question that, but he wasn't a vampire hunter. And we have no good reason to think he was.
Okay, so why do you have reason to believe that he was real but not Jesus?
I didn't say Jesus wasn't real.
Okay, well he did. Elliott did.
He said there's reason to question whether he was real or not. And
Elliott, do you believe Jesus was a real person?
I do not know because I have done my due diligence on both sides, and that's
what I'm saying. He doesn't know, and there's more reason to believe in Jesus than Caesar.
But the difference is I can show my work and I have reasons. I have evidence and arguments. I don't have evidence and arguments against Caesar being real. That's the difference.
Just because there were supernatural things.
It's okay for Elliott to not know because he's read both sides, and now he's like in limbo because they're both good arguments. Sure. The question isn't whether a human being actually existed in history. I'm okay with that. I'm willing to grant that to you. Okay, fine. Jesus existed. Whatever. That's not remarkable. That's not extraordinary. It's just a person. So what? And thousands upon thousands of people were crucified by the Romans. Also not a crazy idea. But now you're bringing in something else. You're bringing in this supernatural thing that you have no way to verify has ever happened in history. You just trust it because, well, the Bible says so.
No, I'm not sola scriptura.
Or the church
tells the Bible says so.
But again, the church, right? I run into the same thing with Richie. You guys never actually know where it comes from. If I say it's from the Bible, then you say it's from church tradition. If I say church tradition's wrong, then you go to the Bible. It's like, which is it? Are you getting why do you even need the Bible?
The church is the one who tells you what scripture is.
Okay, so that we're here again.
Trust
so the
me,
reason
bro.
you believe the resurrection happened is because some dude in history passed it on to some other dude in history who eventually passed it on to a bunch of other dudes, and they all said, "Trust me, bro." And you're here saying, "Well,
yeah, but it wasn't just like two guys."
I guess resurrections happen because somebody said they did.
It was thousands of people.
Thousands of people.
That makes no difference to me because they weren't there.
No difference. Right?
They weren't there.
Do you know that there's millions of people that?
What do you mean they weren't there?
You know, there's millions of people that believe Sai Baba did resurrections and miracles in Africa, and they've all been verified as false, and yet millions of people still believe it. Do you believe he did miracles and raised the dead?
I don't know.
Well,
who would you say?
I doubt you would.
Santi Sai Baba was a guru in India. Millions of followers, like 1 million people showed up to his funeral. Like he raised the dead. He did miracles in front of crowds. Like it miraculous stuff. Some of it's not even on YouTube. It's well publicized, but almost not a single American Christian even knows this guy's name. And that seems like if we're on a hunt for truth, like maybe we should be looking elsewhere and not, confined to the cult, the religion of our culture. And what I said before about they weren't there, I'm talking about the church. The church you get your authority from, they weren't there to witness those events. The source material is the only record that we have of those events, the 4 Gospels. Nobody else.
So we have the traditions of the disciples down the history. That's the thing. It's not just like Christianity started and then you skip 300 years.
Hey, you know what? I could get a billion people can tell me that they have tradition of something happening, but not a single one of those billion people were there to witness the events. They just have it handed down to them. I'm talking about the number of people that actually witnessed it.
Yeah, but eyewitnesses is good evidence.
I don't trust them. I don't believe
you don't trust eyewitnesses.
I don't believe they're eyewitnesses. They don't even say who they were. If I'm going to write a testimony down, perhaps it would behoove me to do a few things, like maybe write it in the first person, maybe make it clear that it is eyewitness testimony from me. Maybe
what if they already know it's you?
Maybe sign it. Maybe say, hey, I, John, witnessed the following events, or I, Mark. Like they did nothing to prove or demonstrate.
Paul does that. Paul does that with his letters, and they say Paul was a real person.
Paul didn't write the Gospels. Paul didn't.
But we're still on the wrong track here, because once again, you asked the question, do you not trust eyewitnesses? And the reality is eyewitness testimony alone is insufficient to draw a certain conclusion, because eyewitness testimony can be wrong. They can be mistaken. So if you're going to, would you be okay being tried for murder and judged sheerly on eyewitness testimony? If they were all saying that you certainly did the murder and you didn't, would you be okay with it?
Testimony from 2,000 years ago. And you can't cross-examine them.
Okay. For example, this is so hard. John, for example, whenever he wrote his letter, his memoir, do you know why he wrote that?
I don't believe that he wrote it. There are reasons to believe that he did not.
Do you know why he wrote it though?
It doesn't matter. I don't believe he wrote it.
Okay, well, they knew who John was. He doesn't have to say his name.
That's not how that's not how it worked. In the ancient world, plagiarism and writing in other people's names was so common. It's so common that a warning against it actually appears in the last verse of Revelation.
Okay, the point is, he wrote a letter to the church, to catechumen who had just been baptized, and he is explaining to them the mysteries of the gospel. And that's why he starts with Jesus is God, instead of the other 3 gospels where it teaches about his earthly ministry and how that folded. He's teaching catechumen who are already Christians, who are already baptized, and that's the historical context, though.
I don't care about John's letter. If I don't believe John actually wrote it, then it doesn't help me, does it?
Even if John wrote it, number one, he didn't give himself a name in the book, and he didn't say I. So number one,
he doesn't have to.
Without external testimony from people who knew him, you'd have no way to know whether or not he wrote it. My question to you is,
Polycarp, Irenaeus.
My question to you is, which of the contemporaries that actually knew John at the time that he wrote it are you able to cross-examine today?
Why do I have to cross-examine them? I mean, I have their letters of what they say about John.
No, because they weren't contemporaries.
They talk about when he wrote it, where he wrote it, who he wrote it under, whenever the ruler of Rome during that time. He gives all that history of when he did it. That's what I have to go off
of. Again, can you cross-examine them? How do you know that they were telling the truth?
Why would they lie whenever John is teaching about the mysteries of the gospel? He is not trying to persuade you of the gospel. He is teaching them what the gospel means.
I'm not even saying they were necessarily lying. I'm saying, how do you know they had the right information?
Are you talking about Irenaeus and Polycarp? How do I know they had the right information?
Any of them. Is it not possible for people
to Polycarp knew John.
So I know my dad, and there's a lot of stuff that I get wrong about his life. He has some pretty cool shit in his life that he did, how he escaped from Germany and came across on a hot air balloon. There's all kinds of stuff. But I get
ask you a question.
I get corrected sometimes. Yeah.
What? Elliott, I don't know if you were religious before, but I think Ellen, you said you were.
I was. Too,
what persuaded you out of Christianity?
These problems. I'll tell you what.
Was it the message though?
Some of it was the message. Well, if you're interested, I wrote an entire book about my reasons. It's called How to Stop Being a Christian, and it's on Amazon, and you can read the introduction for free right there using the Look Inside feature. And I wrote the entire book on my reasons for leaving Christianity because I wanted family and friends to know why. Like I wanted them to see that I was at least see that I believed I was being a rational person, and I wasn't leaving for the common reasons that I get accused of, like, hey, you just want to sin, or you hate God, or you're mad God didn't give you what you wanted, all that crap. Okay, none of that.
You're being genuine.
I'm being genuine. So I gave my reasons, and there are so many reasons that pushed me out of Christianity that I could write a second book and it would be larger than the first. But when it comes right down to it, like what was the time when I sat there and I thought, you know what, I'm not a Christian anymore. And it was learning about how the Gospels were put together, how they grew over time. Like the Mark is the shortest book, and the ending has been apparently redacted and rewritten by somebody else who wasn't Mark. It contains no visions of Jesus after he rises from the dead. And then I learned that Matthew and Luke copy from Mark. So it diminishes the idea that they could be eyewitnesses themselves, because they copy word for word from Mark, and then they copy information from each other. And and they're also written in Greek. They're not written in Hebrew. They're not written in Aramaic, which would have been the common tongue of the disciples. They're also, none of them were written in the first person.
Also spoke Greek was the lingua franca during that time. It was the language of the world. So of course they would know Greek.
Not necessarily. If they were fishermen, they wouldn't have known. It'd be highly likely that they would even be literate. That's an assumption.
That's not true.
That's an assumption.
That's not true.
But
Alexander the Great took over the Mediterranean 300 years before that time. That whole area knew Greek.
Well, do you want to? Okay, there's been quite a bit of scholarship done on this, and there's like 5 to 10% of the general population were even literate at that time. So the apostles would have had to have learned how to write afterwards, and probably learned Greek. And then they didn't write it to their own people in Aramaic or Hebrew, and they didn't sign these letters. They didn't identify who they were when they wrote them.
Hebrews spoke Greek. That's why the Jews spoke Greek.
I don't believe that.
Okay, the book of Maccabees. You have a civil war between holy Jews who keep the law and Hellenized Jews who are losing their language. They're becoming more like the Greeks, and they're not keeping the law. So they have a fight. The holy Jews win. That's where the Pharisees and Sadducees come from.
You asked me what my reasons are, and I know that it's very hard to resist debating them like immediately, but I'm like walking you through why. So I mean, if you want to take issue with them immediately, or you want to hear my whole reasons?
Well, I like to do one at a time, just because like the Septuagint came out of that.
We don't have time to debate every single one that I'm going to give you.
Okay, that's fine.
I'm just laying it out as fast as I can. Why I don't what actually put me over the edge to, hey, I can't be a Christian anymore. And this is all coming on top of other problems that would have resulted in me losing my faith as well. But I just don't trust the Gospels. Okay, the Gospels are claims. They're written in. We see elements of Hellenistic thought coming down from the North Mediterranean. We see a collision of cultures. We see elements of the Babylonian mystery religions that were popular at the time. Like this is all there in the scriptures. This has been like taken apart by scholars and shown like where these elements have come from. And when I see that, and I see the Gospels growing in size and detail over time, the first Gospel being short, ending in much later, an entire rewrite of the story in John, I'm like, you know what? I have no reason to believe these are true stories. I just don't. And then my verification comes.
Yeah, but I just explained to you why John wrote his letter.
I don't believe John wrote that letter.
Yeah, but the point is he's teaching catechumen who are just baptized the mysteries of the gospel. That's why it deals with baptism in John 1, John 2, John 5, John 3.
Even baptism was borrowed from a different culture.
What, Hebrew? Like Judaism?
No, it was borrowed from these mystery cults in the Mediterranean, where they would baptize people into these mystery religions. And he talks about the great mystery of God. Like there's a lot of elements there that aren't from Judaism, and they seem like these people are being influenced to write this legend from other cultures.
Can I ask you why Jesus came?
I don't believe Jesus did come.
Sure, but why did he come?
From whose perspective?
The Christian's perspective.
So you want me to give you the gospel from a Christian's perspective?
Yeah, why he came.
Why would that help? I mean, you already know it.
Because if you don't even understand what we believe, that would hurt your views on why you should agree with Christianity.
Oh, so are you making the case, or are you wanting to make the case that I got the wrong theology and that's why I walked away?
That'd definitely be a help.
So we're going to do the true Scotsman here.
Not. So yeah. So I'm not a true. I was never a true Christian. Is that the fallacy we're going to go with?
No, I'm not. I'm not a Calvinist anymore. I don't believe that. I'm saying you definitely could have believed in God. I'm not taking that experience away from you. What I'm saying is your understanding of what we actually teach could have been wrong.
I believe that Jesus Christ was the Son of God, part of the Trinity, and that he came to earth to save the world from their sins. I believe that he was my personal savior and a sacrifice in my place for my sins, and that if I accepted that, my life would be changed, and that my eternal destination would be heaven.
Right. So that's a Protestant idea, not a historical view. It's a Protestant idea.
Honestly, I don't care, dude. It's fan fiction.
No, because if you read history and then you realize, hey, that's not what the Christians actually believe. What else do I not understand?
I don't believe.
I'm just saying that would lead you away if you were taught wrong growing up, and then you find things that contradict what they actually believe. That would lead you away to something.
I am an atheist. I do not believe that God.
Sure, now you are.
So it doesn't matter.
Right.
You can't bring me back to your version of Christianity if I don't even believe that there's a God.
The real reason, you know why I left Christianity? I know Elliott's got a lot more to say because his was a lot more difficult. He's big. He did a lot of studying to get himself out. For me, it was just over a process of time. Things just started to no longer add up. But ultimately, I was in the middle of a prayer to God, trying to talk to him and get to know him and see where he was, and because I was coming out of depression or whatever. And I realized that I no longer had good reason to believe a God even exists for me to talk to. Like, I couldn't think of a single way to falsify the existence of God. I realized my whole belief was simply based on faith. There was no reason to it. There was no logic. I had no grounds to even embrace a supernatural. And all this time, I had just been living as though one existed and never once sat down to question whether or not there was good reasons to believe that. And then one day in the middle of prayer, I was like, what am I doing? And just like that, it was gone. It was like
Sure. But so, for example, though, we don't believe in a blind faith.
Oh, yes, you do. But that's okay. That's for another debate.
No, even whenever you find pistis in Greek, it's three things. First, you have to understand what you're believing into. Second, you have to have a what's the word? You have to have a conviction of that information. And three, you decide to trust it once you have weighed the information.
Yes, which you have not been able to weigh all the information because you have not yet demonstrated how you would falsify the existence of God. That was my
point is, though, whenever you see a chair, You don't just believe the chair is there. You look at the chair, you see what it's made out of. Is it going to support you? Then you trust that it's going to carry your weight, and then you sit down.
Great.
It's not
Do
a blind.
that with God.
It's not a blind faith.
Tell me how you did that with God, then.
Well, I'm telling you, my experiences when it comes to my health, my trips with other people, seeing how God has moved in other people's lives and how He's changed their life, and then what I see in history has persuaded me.
We even established with those experiences that you have no way to distinguish between it being a natural event and a supernatural event.
And then atheism definitely hasn't persuaded me, because whenever it comes to
atheism isn't something that persuades anybody. Atheism it's just the default position.
Yes, it is. No, there's still a belief system in atheism.
No, there isn't.
How is there? I would have to. Okay, I'm not going to say that.
Tell me what the belief system is. Tell me what's the.
I'm saying I'm persuaded more to be a Christian than I would an atheist.
Now you made a claim, and I want you to tell me, what is the atheism belief system?
That there is no God.
No, I have not made that claim.
Isn't that what atheist means?
No.
No God.
It means not theism. It means not God. It means literally, I'm unconvinced that God exists. It does not.
But A means no, and Theos means God. So no God. You don't believe in a God.
Correct. That's different than saying I don't. That's different than saying I believe none exist. I'm just unpersuaded that any do.
So more agnostic.
Sure, that's fine. But atheism in general is literally the default position from a belief that a God exists. Once I no longer believe a God exists, I disbelieve that one exists. That's not belief, it's disbelief, because I'm not convinced. So tell me, what is the belief system of atheism?
So do you believe in science?
This isn't anything to do with atheism. This is a question about
I'm just saying, does science help you not believe in God?
No.
Science doesn't help you not believe in God?
No.
Because
am I saying that wrong?
Because science is done by people of all faiths. Science is something different.
Right, but I'm just saying has science helped you believe in not believe in religions? Because you're like, I can see this in science and I can prove it here. So I'm more persuaded by this rather than
you're confusing the question here. As an atheist, obviously I have beliefs and I believe science is a good method. If you want to talk about all the things I believe as an atheist, that's fine. That isn't the question here. The question is, what is the belief system of atheism, which answers only one question? It's about the existence of God. I have no belief system outside of that as far as atheism is concerned, because it isn't a belief system.
Okay.
Once I'm an atheist, now obviously I restructure my worldview, if you even want to call it that, and start believing many things. That's all fine and good. But answering the one question about atheism, it's just, do I believe a God exists or don't I? Simple.
Atheism is an empty bucket.
Yes.
Anyone can be an atheist, and they can fill that bucket with whatever they want. They could believe in science. They could believe in chakras. They could believe in astrology, but they simply don't believe in God. So it's an empty bucket. You can fill it with whatever you want.
Okay. So I would say I'm more persuaded that there is a God than I am that there is not a God.
Yes, we understand that. And I'm asking you how you will falsify that a God exists. You used the chair example, which is a wonderful example. And I'm asking how you did that with God. Saying I had an experience that I can't really be sure is supernatural or natural is not the same thing as checking out the chair the way you said.
Sure. Like when it comes to science, I agree that we can't, something can't come out of nothing. I believe in that.
Okay. There's nothing wrong with that statement.
Therefore, I believe there is a God because of creation.
Well, tremendous leap. That's a huge jump.
You just assumed the creation.
Where did it come from?
We don't know.
How could I possibly know?
Go and rewind.
Hold on.
Go and rewind.
How could I possibly know that? I am a human being on Earth in like adrift in a universe that is bigger than I can possibly comprehend. And I can never get outside of that universe to see if there is something out there that could have created the universe. Even if I could, like, how do I know that it was a God that did it? Like, you're making a huge jump. You're saying a God did it specifically. You didn't get outside the universe to check. You have no idea what's
right.
out
Well, we have time, matter, and space, which have to come in. They have to come in at the same time.
That doesn't get into a God, man. I can't, if I
so
can't,
yeah, so a God would have to be outside of those things to be able to create those things.
And I can't get outside of those things to check. So how could I possibly know that there is a God?
Okay, well, when it comes to simple things, building a house, there was a builder. That's common sense. See a painting, there was a painter. That's common sense.
There was a universe builder.
How was there not? If we have consciousness,
all you're demonstrating is that humans make things, and that things made by humans are made by humans. But that tells you nothing about the supernatural. That tells you nothing about how the universe came about, because it's not made by a human. So how can you possibly make the same deduction?
Because I know, compared to all of the living things, we're spiritual people, we're conscious people.
Well, I don't even know what that means. That's an assertion. What does that mean? Be a spiritual person.
We believe in gods. We believe in something outside of ourselves.
Sure, people believe that, but does the fact that people believe things, is that a reliable way to determine truth?
Well, animals don't.
Irrelevant.
Why is it irrelevant?
Because what does that have to do with the question?
If we got here from random whatever, which is impossible.
Well, who said it's random?
Science said it was random that we got here. Well,
it's not real. It does not.
It doesn't say it comes from random matter just flying in space.
Then nothing is random about the laws of physics.
It's right. It's all following the laws of physics. So nothing is random, and anything that, no matter how great the percentage, or how am I trying to say it? No matter how unlikely something is to happen, given enough time, it will eventually happen.
Hey, Brave, let me give you a way that you can falsify my atheism, and I will believe in a God. Okay. Within the universe, we have identified 4 forces of nature. We have the weak and strong nuclear force, we have electromagnetism, and we have gravity. If you can identify a fifth creative force, which would be a God, you can show that, then I'll believe one exists.
I'm not a scientist.
Then why are we talking about science?
Because of I give you a simple example of, like, whenever I see a painting, I know there is a painter who did that. Like, so I can. Whenever we look at DNA, it's coded. There's a design there.
So have you ever seen a human painter?
Yes.
Cool. Have you ever seen a supernatural creator?
No.
Then how can you possibly know they're the same thing? You have no way. Like, you can observe natural things and know they exist, and so you can look at it and say, oh, okay, these things happen. But nature works differently. People don't create rocks. That's natural. That's something that is evolved.
Yeah, but there's things I believe in that I can't see, like gravity. I can't see it.
But you can test it. You can observe how it works. Gravity is a term we give to how things function.
Okay.
But you can't observe that with a supernatural being. You just have to assume one exists, but you can't actually observe it. And until you can observe something, how can you possibly know it's real?
No, I think there's a lot of things we can't observe whenever it comes to, like love and inward emotions and things like that. You can't observe that with the physical eye. You can't put it under a microscope and test it.
You can actually,
you can,
because all of it comes from the brain.
Yeah.
Sure.
We can look at brain scans. So we know which hormones and neurotransmitters are involved in these feelings.
Sure, like chemical releases and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I know Christians don't like to hear that. They want to characterize it as, oh, you're just electric meat with chemicals swirling around. But
Oh, I mean, my mother-in-law is a neuropsychologist, like I said. But
show that if you can show something outside of that, something more than that, I'm all ears.
no, I believe in.
You're talking about feelings, and feelings can lead us in some really bad directions that are not true.
I think I'm persuaded by history when it comes to Jesus, and you're not, but I am, and the message that he teaches, I think, is what really motivates me, I guess, in life.
I think ultimately the question, we're going to have to end here soon here, but
Sure.
I think the ultimate question you need to ask yourself is, if you've never observed God, you have to ask yourself, did the people who passed down this message ever observe a God? Or did they also just believe it and tell you it was real? Who in the history that we have of the church has ever actually seen God? The only one you're going to be able to say is Jesus, right?
Right. Who is God?
Well, you have to make a giant assumption that Jesus was God, because first you have to assume God is real. Then you have to assume Jesus was born into a man and he was God. Then you have to assume Jesus rose from the dead. You have to make a whole lot of assumptions about this Jesus guy, when in fact, the only one you can actually make that I think is fair to make is he probably existed. It was a human being. But even that is speculative. We have to just assume it. But you have no way, no matter who you go to in history, you have to assume that whoever told us originally that God exists actually observed this God, and you have to believe that. That's a big thing to believe, man. That would be no different than me telling you I saw a leprechaun and you trusting me. And you'd have a better chance to believe that I saw a leprechaun because I'm real. I'm sitting there right in front of you. Why would you not believe I saw a leprechaun? But you'll believe someone was raised from the dead.
Brave, before you respond to that, first of all, I want to thank you for coming on. It's no small thing to put your face on camera and get into this stuff for everybody to watch. So I really appreciate you coming on. You're welcome back anytime to discuss anything that's on your mind. Anytime. We're here every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern. So I'm going to give you the last word. If you want to respond to Ellen, whatever you want to say, I'll give you 30 to 60 seconds before we let you go, and we'll close off at that. So it is all yours, buddy.
Well, I appreciate you guys also, and I know this for those who are watching. These are real issues people deal with, just like the depression you went through are real things. Me losing a child, for being my wife, that's 10 out of 10 on the hurt scale. My wife went through depression as well. And for a husband to have to hold in emotions so he could be there for his wife, that's very, very hard. But I'm persuaded by what I've studied in archaeology, my experiences, when it comes to, I guess, my spiritual experiences with God, learning what the church actually teaches about redemption and why he came, him healing humanity, him giving himself so we can, we can't save ourselves from death. The goal is not heaven and hell. We have no savior for death, and he came here to save us from death, right? And so I believe that he came to heal mankind without partiality. But him being a God who is love, he doesn't do anything by force or compulsion. So in Christianity, only those who reconcile and love him are going to have life, because God is life. And if you don't don't have a relationship with him who is life, the natural consequences is death. And that my experiences of following his commands and other things I've done in my life, I've seen what has taught. I've seen how it's affected my life, my family's life, friends' lives. And I don't know. I always am going to keep researching and testing. Church history is a ton, and there are a lot of things we have to deal with. For example, we don't have any autographs of the Bible, you know. But learning about Pamphilus, learning about Polycarp, dealing with those kinds of things, learning about people who actually knew John and them being passed down. Those things persuade me even more. But even just saying that the church did not believe in sola scriptura persuades me more, because they weren't going based off of all our truth is just in a book. Go by the book and that's it. They were the vehicle, the pillar and foundation of truth that they taught the people. And I don't know. I guess that's all I can say is I will consider what you had to say, look into your book, and just keep looking into it, you know. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Well, brave.
No problem.
Yeah, we mean it. Like, you were the light to talk. You know, you're a good guest when you were the only one the whole time. I feel really bad for the people in the back, because we had Joe back there waiting. We had Richie back there waiting.
Sorry.
No, it's not your fault. We had Carrington Bridges, freaking Carrington back there waiting. I'm so annoyed that we didn't get to all of them, but it's not because of you. It's just time just goes like that, man. You were just great to talk to, so I don't regret it at all.
Yeah, if we wrap this up, we might be able to get Joe on. So this is a
Okay,
good starting point.
All right, let's do that.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah,
Appreciate
great.
it.
See you, everybody.
Take care.
Right before we bring Joe on, Joe, I need you to put your camera on for us, because we always have a video. Give me just a second, Joe. Let me just let everybody know this Sunday, don't forget to check out that's tomorrow night, right? Critical Call with AJ and Mark Reed. So make sure you guys check that out right here on Skeptic Haven. Be sure, if you're not watching through Skeptic Haven, make sure to become a subscriber to Skeptic Haven. The link is in the info. So make sure you do that. And then next week, we are coming back again next Tuesday night with atheists with Christian families. So we're going to have some conversations about how do you deal with that? Because that's tough when you become an atheist and you have Christian families and friends. So be here next week to talk about that. We would love even some atheists or ex-Christians to call in or hop in and talk with us. So, but both of you, Christians, non-Christians, be there next week. Let's talk. Joe, welcome back, man. As usual, you're at the end and we have to make this quick. You were first, so you were going to be here anyhow. But again, to Carrington and Richie, sorry we couldn't get to you guys. Please come back next week, though, guys, because you two are fun guys to talk to. So we hope you do. But anyway, Joe, what's up, man?
Hey, how's it going? I was just listening on the last gentleman. I mean, it seemed like it deviated quite a bit from the original topic, which was Christian joy is fabricated. Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay.
For sure. So you have Christian joy, I assume.
I'm not even sure what that. I mean, like, I've heard of it. It's sort of like a nebulous term.
Well, the joy,
like
let's say the joy in your life. Do you believe it comes from God?
I believe it can. I wouldn't say it is exclusively from God. I mean, me having, like, for example, a nice piece of steak, it would be a little weird if I was to say, oh, this came from God. That would be a little strange.
Right. Well, do you believe all good things come from God?
All good things?
Yeah.
All good things.
Well, like the steak, I guess. That's
well,
a good thing in your life.
The Bible says all good things come from God. I think it's in James. All good things come down from the Heavenly Father of lights, or something like that.
I would say yes, but I would also say that some people's perspective on what good is, like for example, someone might have a tragedy, for example, um, and they may or may not attribute it to it being a good thing. It could be a lesson that they learned from it. And the only way for them to experience it is to experience that tragedy. But then they could also have the perspective that is not of God. So does all good things come from God? Perhaps that is subjective. I would say subjectively, yes, all good things
Well,
does.
let's talk about all things for a second, because I know we've concentrated on joy and good things, but if you hold the premise that God is omnipotent and has created the universe and has created the rules of how everything is going to work, then wouldn't all things come from God, including the negative things? Like, would cancer come from God too?
No, I would say, and as cliche as it may sound, I would say it's kind of like there's cancer, things that cause death and destruction.
Yeah.
I personally don't think so. I personally think a lot of these things is a cause of our actions, whether it be by diet, their environment, the stress that's caused from the environment. It is like a cause and effect. So I don't believe so, because cause and effect is in play, which is a universal law. That doesn't. We have choices.
Wouldn't God have set up cause and effect?
Absolutely, and that
Like,
would imply choice.
Logically, everything has to come from God at some point. I mean, the buck stops with God on everything. I mean, even if he didn't himself create cancer, he would have engineered the rules by which it would have come into being, right?
I wouldn't say he would engineer the rules. It's sort of like the potentiality. I mean, cause and effect. You can't have cause and effect and not have the potential for a negative outcome. So, and that is a choice that we do make, whether it's conscious or unconscious. A lot of it is unconscious. You know, diabetes happened to me. Did it happen to you? It depends. Was it type 1? Did you inherit it from your mother? She did some things that she shouldn't had no business doing. Now you have it. Or it could be something you did to yourself.
I get that, but
So,
let's take it all the way back to the beginning. I assume that I shouldn't assume, but do you hold to a literal view of Genesis? Like everything that happened in there was actually happened in history?
No, no,
You don't.
not the
So
whole
you don't think
35,000 years.
When God cursed Adam and said, you will surely die and go back to dust, do you think that God invented death?
So this is a cause and effect thing. I'm not entirely convinced that God cursed Adam in a sense, Adam and Eve, and said this is going to be your lot in life. It's more so that if they choose to not to follow God and continue to follow God, and they choose to go the opposite, then it only makes sense that we have the situation we are in now. That just makes logical sense based on choices that they made. Wasn't that because God made them do that? Although I know some people will say the snake was God.
You're right. Let's pretend Adam and Eve had free will and they sinned on their own. That was their free will to do that. But the scripture says God then came down and he judged them for it. And he essentially rewrote the laws of physics. He said that cursed is the ground. It will now bring forth thorns and thistles, and you shall surely die and become dust. He made a free will decision to do that on his own. That wasn't cause and effect, because he could have chosen to not do that. He could have chosen to just fix it, put it all back together the way it was before. So when does God take responsibility for his free will choices?
So let's assume that he said something like that, that that it was God's fault that the ground became cursed because of a choice that Adam and Eve made.
Or a choice God made to do that.
Or yeah. How would it in any way teach anyone a lesson by, if you're putting your hand on the stove and saying, well, I'm just going to heal your hand, even though you put your hand on the stove, you know it's hot, you were warned it's going to be hot, and you burnt yourself. Now you want me to then fix that problem that you caused yourself when I've told you not to do that. Some lessons, unfortunately,
do you think that God
have to be
could have?
learned the hard way.
Do you think God could have taught this lesson in a way that we didn't give cancer to children and people don't die in agony from viruses like rabies? Do you think maybe there could have been another way for God to have taught these lessons without sending hurricanes to wipe out tens of thousands of people who live along the coast? I mean, I wouldn't do this to a child if I was trying to teach them the lesson. I wouldn't, when that child touches that hot stove and gets burned, I wouldn't then take that child and rub his face in it and burn his face off and say, you got to learn a lesson. You know, there's proportions to this. It's so out of proportion to give a 4-year-old cancer to teach a lesson, or to send a flood to in the there's a flood in China back in the, I think, 400s that killed like 400,000 people. Like,
I just heard about that.
I mean, that's wild to say God's going to teach a lesson, but when he does teach these lessons, he's going to utterly crush you into the dirt. Wouldn't do that to a child to teach a lesson, would we?
Well, we're coming from two different perspectives, in that I'm saying if God did say that the ground is going to be cursed, then that does not necessarily, well, could that mean he cursed it himself? Or is it that because of what Adam and Eve did that they cursed it, that they brought the curse upon the land? So it's kind of like, well, this is something you guys did. And
well,
you
it sounds like if you read the actual source material, which is the only place that we get this idea, honestly, is right there in Genesis. If we didn't have the Genesis curse, we wouldn't even be talking about this, because we wouldn't know about it. But if you read it word for word for what it actually says, like, the ground being cursed was a punishment. There was no lesson involved. He didn't say, I'm doing this to teach you a lesson. He's like, now you're going to suffer. That's a punishment.
It's been a while since I've read that. I have to go back and reread it again, but I'm pretty sure you're about right that it uses that kind of language, and that it frames it in such that, in a way, it sounds like sadism. In a way, it's dicey. So I can't deny that that's what it says that's what it says in scripture. That it implies that, let's say Adam and Eve did make that mistake and there's cause and effect. You could argue that, well, God made it worse by either allowing it or sort of amplifying it. And that's a possibility, according to what scripture does say. Do I personally believe that God did that just because scripture says that God did that? No. But that's a personal belief. And a lot of Christians don't ascribe to that. They would ascribe to saying that, well, yeah, we deserve it. That's what they'll say to you. They'll say, we deserve that kind of punishment from God. We deserve to have the rains or whatever, the firmament burst open and flood everybody and kill millions. It's almost like we deserve to be hurt and to be punished by this deity of some sort because of what they believe in scripture. I personally don't believe it that way, even though I know that's what it says in scripture.
Let's talk about what you believe. Do you believe that God has free will?
Well, yeah, if he created us to have free will, it would make sense that he himself, if we are the image of him, it would make sense that he himself has free will.
Right. So that means God has choices. He has choices with how he deals with humans. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay,
in the same way he has choices, he gave us the choice to choose how we live our life. For better or worse.
Then God had a choice to create or engineer or allow, which is what he's doing, even if he doesn't specifically do these things to us. He still had a choice to allow these things to happen. He had a choice to engineer a world like this with so much suffering in it in so many different ways that a single human can never comprehend the depth and the breadth and the terror of all the suffering in the world, because we can only see it from our perspective. As much as I read history and read about things like the Holocaust or natural disasters or diseases, I can still never quite wrap my head around the amount and volume and terror of suffering that the world contains. God allowed that. God had a choice to allow that, and he chose to allow it. So how can I not think that God desires incalculable suffering?
That's a huge leap. I can't answer that for you. I stand on the belief, or I would say the knowing, that we are the cause of our own suffering, and that just like, as you said, God has choices and free will, he gave us that same thing if we are in his essence. And that comes with all ranges of consequences, for better or for worse, like I said earlier. We, as creators in ourselves, if he is the creator, then we are creators. That makes sense. If that's the case, then that means we have to also accept the consequences of the creations that we make. And like you said, the things that are just, you can't wrap your head around some of the things that happens in the world, the AIDS and the cancer and the poverty, for example. But
I can make, I can make choices to increase my odds of getting cancer. I can make choices to do evil to other people. I do have free will to create suffering in the world. Yeah, absolutely. But one thing I don't create are tsunamis. That's God's creation. I didn't choose that with my free will. God did.
So I'm looking at nature, and I think of nature in that we are supposed to respect nature. Now let's look at this practically. For example, Florida. Florida has always been a swampland. It was never meant to be inhabited the way that it has been, and we've always known that. But because of the tropical environment and everything else, we want to conquer things. So now we pay the price of having hurricanes come into that space. Is nature to blame if we decide to go in places that we know we ought not to be?
That's a great point. That's a great point. Let's run with that. Let's run with that. That's awesome. Okay. So we put ourselves in that position to get taken out by natural disasters. Great. We chose to move to Florida to do that. Okay. Where on earth can I choose to live where I'm free from a natural disaster? If it's choices.
Where on earth?
If I move to the mountains, I could freeze to death and I could starve to death. If I move to the prairie where I am right now, I can get killed by a tornado or I can run out of water. If I move to any coastline, I can be subject to hurricanes and tsunamis. Or out in California, I can be subject to earthquakes. I can be subject to volcanoes. Like, there's nowhere I can go on earth with my free will to escape natural disasters that God is responsible for. He has created this world in such a way that I cannot escape using my free will.
Well, I mean, we can always, not to use it as a cop-out, but just going back to the original, I mean, I can't imagine Adam and Eve having a terrible life, again, until they made the choice to do what they did, which we inherit in some ways. In the same way, a child, an adult who has diabetes can give that to their child and they have type 1. Or
how's that fair for us? How's that fair for us to inherit Adam and Eve's sin when we were not there, didn't have the choice to not do that sin?
Well, and I mean, that's just, I can't even explain that. It's something that we inherit, and it's something that we can choose to break free from. But a lot of us choose not to. And some of us,
but after Adam and Eve, Joe, this is what's just really bothering me, man. I can't get my head around this fact. All right, this is a fact. It's logically a fact from your position and from my position. If God exists and the stories are true, Adam and Eve make this free will choice and they pay the price for it. Okay, they did it. It's on them. But then, in the aftermath of Adam and Eve, billions of more humans have been brought into the world to suffer something that they didn't do. Billions have been brought into the world to inherit that judgment and that sin. Like, God decided to allow that. He could have limited the damage to Adam and Eve, limited the punishment to Adam and Eve, but he didn't do that. He multiplied the punishment and the suffering and the judgment by billions and billions of people. How is that justice?
Well,
it sounds to me like God wants to maximize Adam and Eve's sin and damage.
Do you know what we call people who say, "Do what I command you, or I will punish your family for it"? Call them terrorists. And that's exactly what God did. Adam and Eve didn't do what he said. So what does he do? He punishes their whole family for it. All their offspring.
So
In
if
what world is that good? In what world can we say that's good?
My conclusion is that God is evil. If he exists, he is so evil we can't even comprehend how evil he is. He's worse than any human that's ever existed. Because as a human, the most I can do is torture and kill someone. But God can do so much more than that. And he can do it on a scale that embarrasses the most ambitious genocidal psychopath. He is incalculably evil.
well, so hold on. Let's just, I guess, bring it down to our level, the human level. If you were to have kids, and I don't know if you do, but if you did, if you're a decent man, you would understand that the consequence of you not having a job to take care of that child is that child becomes malnourished, potentially passes away, or all kinds of different illnesses. So it would be wild for me to say, well, God is at fault for something that you did, and that unfortunately, as a cause and effect, has been passed down to the child. It's I would look and look at that parent and say, well, you're responsible, right? You were the one who made the choices you did or did not make.
Correct.
Allowed
And
that
that
child to be in that
parent, and
predicament.
you're right. You're absolutely right.
So
and
accountability.
that parent has a name. That parent has a name, and the parent's name is God.
No. Yeah. It's I mean, that's what if you say it's God and it makes you feel like all the evils of the world is a direct reflection of God and his nature, as opposed to man's nature, our nature, what we have done and still continue to do.
It's his world.
Then
it's God's world.
This is what we mean when we say Christian joy. This is what we mean when we say Christian joy is fabricated. Because when you look at the facts, this is believing that God is good is not reality, man. That whole idea is fabricated in your head. Because like you think about when you go to Sunday school and the kids are taught about the flood, why don't they talk about what the flood actually did to everybody, including children, babies that were drowning as moms are just trying to keep them above water until they couldn't hold them up anymore. Babies who never did anything. And they're dying by drowning only to save the 8 people that God likes. Like, and what we teach in Sunday school is God is so good, he made a rainbow. That's the kind of shit that's being fabricated and pushed into your mind. And when that happens, you don't pay attention to the facts of the stories. This is God at work doing shit.
I mean, that's a, like I said, that's a sadist. That's someone who enjoys taking pleasure and seeing their own creations, let's just say his children, in pain. I highly doubt that. I personally don't feel that. But you could look at the world at large and say, well, clearly there's evidence that God is a maniac, is a psychopath, sociopath, whatever. And
but Joe, if I were God, I'm better than any version of God, because in my humanity, if I created a world, created a universe, I would never create it like this. I would never allow these things to happen. I would never see the child touch the hot stove, as in eat the fruit on the tree, and when I told them not to. And I wouldn't say, you know what, you disobeyed me. Now I'm going to absolutely fuck you every possible way I can imagine, and I'm going to allow billions more to be created on my world, and I'm going to do the same to them. Like, I would never do that. And that tells me that this God cannot exist.
Wait. So you're also saying all that, it sounds great and a utopian and everything. I would never allow these things to happen. But then you would also simultaneously not allow that child or that person to have the choice, the will to decide to do those things, even if it goes against what you want, which is love. Right,
Joe, I have
there's a bigger problem
here. I'm sorry I keep interrupting you. I do apologize. It's just that we're kind of getting low on time, and I have a choice. It comes down to this. I have a choice for what I'm going to believe about the world. And choice A is that the world is terrible like this and that there's a God that made it all possible. Choice B is that this happened through natural processes, and that's why we have all this pain and suffering. And we are in a fight for survival as living organisms, competing for resources in a very uncontrolled environment, and bad things happen. And they happen a lot because we're not necessarily created or designed for this world. Therefore, we're going to suffer because of that. Okay. So between those two choices, like, I'm not going to pick the God one, because that means that we've got this incredibly powerful, but also apparently evil being who did this on purpose, versus this just happened to us. And I believe this just happened to us. That's my choice.
Oh, you believe it. So you're not as let's see, unbiased for, I don't believe that, atheism is me. I don't know. Basically, it's that I don't know question. You clearly have a bias, and it's very strong. It's intense.
No. It's a default assumption. I have been born into a world, and I look around me, and this is what I see. What I see is what I get. That's all. That's as far as I can get. I don't see a God. Okay, so I'm going to go with the conclusion that this is something that has happened to us because we were not created for this environment. Therefore, we're going to suffer because we're struggling to survive. That's my default assumption. It is not a dogma. It's not a belief. It's just my default. I don't know anything else. I've never met this God. All I know is what people have told me about him. I read the stories, and the stories say that it's all that he did all this. This is all his responsibility. And I'm like, well, man, that sounds like a crazy story, and an evil one too. I'm going to go with what I see is what I get.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff that portrays God is, for example, I look at some of the things about, I don't know if you can say, grape, and how if a man grapes a woman in an Old Testament, then it's almost as if it's her fault, and it is on her to marry that guy. It's a lot of questionable things that is attributed to God, or God thus said the Lord. That if you were to read it at face value, that's exactly what it is. And that is exactly the God that's portrayed. And you have like a schizophrenic version where in the New Testament, he's like this loving, positive version. It's like, wait a second. So what about this one in the Old Testament? It's the weirdest dichotomy to me. And also the reason why it's still written by man. So if you are to go by scripture, as most people do, and say, well, the reasons for me not believing in God is because of how God is portrayed in the scripture, and then you look out into the world and say, well, clearly this is what God is. I think that's a very short-sighted way of looking at God, because you're looking at book and then say book, see book evidence, okay, there it is, as opposed to like the holistic picture.
Yusuf, let me try to make this as simple as possible. Can God sin?
Impossible.
Impossible, right?
Impossible.
Okay. Is God capable of making something in his image accurately?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. And you would think that if that was his goal, he couldn't fail, right?
Absolutely.
All right. So if God can't sin, and he made Adam and Eve in his image, then either Adam and Eve were failed creations because they were able to sin, or God intentionally deceived us all by saying he made them in his image, but he didn't really want to create them in his image, because part of his image bearing would be his incapability of sinning, would it not?
Okay, so we're not God, right? When I say I'm not connecting the two, we're not God. So there's a lot of things about God that we are not.
Let me ask you,
image.
What parts of God were in his image bearers? Like, do we get to just pick the parts? Well, love and free will and justice and whatever, joy. I mean, but you don't like the can't sin one? God is all those things, and he made somebody in his image. The whole point was for that image bearer to reflect him correctly. And he failed to do that part of his image by making them incapable of sinning.
Okay, so I'll answer that directly. If free will is a choice, and God also has free will, and he gave us free will as a result of us being in his image, then if we have a choice to do things that is outside of the nature of God, then that choice remains.
Right, but you
Now,
see
we
the
might-
conflict. You see the conflict here then. There's a conflict.
So you're,
Does God have free will?
I know we do, and I am assuming that as a result of us having free will, that it makes logical sense that he does. To what extent, I can't wrap my head around that. But
I'm wondering
God,
the other way around. How are we created in his image if not inclusive of the things that are his characteristics? One of which is the incapability of sinning, even though he also has free will.
If God can't sin, he doesn't have free will.
oh, I mean, I guess you're God. I assume. I mean, if that's
Are we more
conclusion,
Are we more powerful than God? Is our free will more powerful? We can do more things than God can.
I think we're a lot more powerful than we think we are, but not
But
as
are we
not
more
as powerful
powerful
as
than
God.
God? Are there options available to us that are not available to God? That would make us more powerful than God if there are things we can do he can't.
I would say the one thing that I think that we do that he can't, which is why we exist, is you could say, well, if God exists, then he can experience all things. I think he experiences things through us in a way that he cannot. And so it's through our perspective, through our eyes, everything that it's kind of like we experience it and he receives it and he enjoys it. We experience it, but he can't do what we can do in the sense that like experience the things we do on earth, the very intangible things. Sort of like he's a macro perspective, we're the micro perspective, and it takes two to tango. So for him to be the fullness of who he is, then we have to be who we are.
So things
So
like
it's kind of like
sin.
a symbiotic.
So we can sin and God can't.
Well, for example, if
That's
we
a
are to
question.
believe
That
this,
was a question. Can we sin and God can't?
God in his nature, I can't, I'm not God, so I can't answer if he can or cannot. But I can only say that it's extremely unlikely that he does, although scripture
You
does
said
imply
earlier that when I asked you originally, you said God can't sin. You said absolutely. You were definitive. God can't sin.
It sounds like God created humans just so that he could experience sin, because he can't, so he had to find a surrogate. Because you said that
wow.
God is experiencing things through humans. So maybe because God can't sin, he creates humans to sin for him so he can experience what that's like.
And that's a wild take, Elliott. That is a
I
wild
know.
take.
I'm full of them.
Because so when we do sin, because he
But
experiences
then we have a
things.
different problem. Now we're not created in his image.
Well, hold on. When we do sin, there's times that we can read in scripture how it grieves, for example, the Holy Spirit. And I can speak to myself personally when I've done things that I know I ought not to do, that I can feel sort of like the disappointment. So it's like, it's not even just me. Like I might feel okay about it personally, but there might be something else where it's like, I feel, God, that didn't feel, I got to get right. I got to not do that. Even though I might enjoy smoking weed, for example, I might enjoy going to the strip club, for example. It's something outside of myself that's kind of like, it hurts me, but it's not me that's hurting. It's him. And I can feel that. So yeah, he feels the things we do, but that doesn't mean that he does the things we do. But you guys are, again, you're kind of like pushing everything on, he's ultimately the one responsible. And I can't change your mind about that. I say that we have to be accountable for our own actions. And even Jesus himself would say, we are accountable for whether or not we go to be with God or not. It is that, even that is a choice. It's all a choice. And we might not like the choices and the outcomes of the choices we make, but that is in itself love. If I'm giving you the choice, instead of, Elliott, I know you would much rather take your child and put him in a cage and say, now you can never burn your hands. Now you can never jump off the bridge and commit suicide. Now you can never do this and that. But true love is allowing your child.
It's about proportionality. So like I said before, I don't take that child after he's burned his hand and I don't take his face and burn it off on the stove to teach him a lesson. There are lessons to be learned. If God controls this world and he's got lessons to teach us, that's one thing. And that could come through suffering. Absolutely it could. Okay. Because, growth comes through pain. It's the volume and the amount and the proportion. It's so fucking outrageous that the only conclusion is that this is what he wants. He has designed the world to be like this intentionally because he had choices to not. And he has made it so unbelievably bad that it's out of proportion. There are no lessons to be learned. There are no lessons for a parent to be learned when their 4-year-old dies of cancer. What lessons could they possibly be learning? What lesson does someone learn when they die of rabies? When their brain is inflamed and they're just writhing in pain for 3 days to a week? What lesson are they learning? Like, I don't understand.
What lesson did the thousands of Egyptian babies learn when they were all slaughtered by the angel of death because God wanted to draw a picture of Jesus someday?
There's a carving in a concentration camp by somebody who most likely died there, and it's scrawled out, because there is an Auschwitz, there is no God.
Because, I'm sorry, say it again.
Because Auschwitz exists, God does not. There were no lessons to be learned in the Holocaust. If everything happens according to God's will, then he's responsible for that too.
So you're saying that there was no lessons learned from the Holocaust. I can tell you.
Not by the people that got killed. What did they learn?
So, I mean, I guess you can speak.
Did they learn to trust God?
Wow, Elliott, I know you asked that question sort of like sarcastically, but that's exactly on the base level what it was. Their faith in God strengthened. And me having been growing up in a synagogue for a long time,
but the fact that somebody scrawled that on the wall of the concentration camp means their faith was not strengthened. Their atheism was strengthened by what happened to them.
So you're looking at what one and perhaps a group, perhaps dozens of individuals felt at the time and say, well, that's across the board. I would say, again, from my experience, having grown up Jewish, around a lot of Jewish people for a very long time, just short of my bar mitzvah, that for them, they don't take the position that you just said that's how they feel in general. Now, granted, these are the offspring of those who did suffer through that. So unless we look at some of the, I guess, accounts of those who have actually been there, which I have, I listened to some of them in the 80s and 70s. And although it's still, when they tell these stories, it brings them pain, they still go back and reflect on how God got them through it, how God allowed them to strengthen them through it. They've learned a lot about themselves and humanity because of it. And yeah, of course, some people were sour about the experience. Why me? God is punishing me. So I'm not denying that those people did exist, but I'm saying by and large, the Jewish people have regrouped themselves, and we see evidence of their faith in God in a lot of different ways.
It's worth noting that a tremendous proportion of practicing Jews today are atheists. They believe in the idea of God, but they don't actually believe he exists.
So you're telling me something that, again, I'm telling you what I know from this in this example. I can't tell you what Muslims think or whatever, Buddhists. I can tell you how Jewish people generally think and feel, and what I just told you is generally how they think and feel. I mean, I grew up with them. I was raised by them. They were some of the most God-loving people I've ever met. Didn't believe in Jesus. I didn't find out until much later. But God, that was the one that was the one pillar that they held on to. In spite of what you're saying, how you're telling me that they felt, I'm just telling you from experience, which is unusual because most people are thinking about, oh, this is how they must have felt. I'm telling you for certain that by and large, they were all very godly people. Just more so than, I wish I was more like that now today than I am now.
And where did it get them? Where did it get them? Trust in God.
Where did it get them?
Where did it get them? Trust in God. Got them right into the ovens.
Well, listen, there's no guarantee that life is going to be all sunshine and roses. And they didn't charge that against God and say, well, God did this to me. They look at the people responsible.
The problem is that I apologize for keep interrupting you, but we're at 2 hours and 55 minutes, so we're coming pretty close here. I will give you the last word. Don't worry. But it appears to me that trusting God and not trusting God results in almost always the same thing. Like, it's just random, dude. Like, you can have all these Jews that trusted God and got killed in the Holocaust. You can have people that don't trust in God at all, psychopathic, sadistic individuals. They end up billionaires or running the world. Like, where does trusting God get you versus not trusting God? It's all random.
Well, if my trust in God is conditional on happy times all the time, then I don't really have trust in God. That's conditional. But if I really love God, even through it all, then it would be easy for me to place blame on him for things that go wrong, and say, well, only good things that happen to me is because of God. So
do you credit him for good? Do you credit him for the good things that go right?
Well, I'm a willing participant in a lot of the experiences that I have. So when things go right, there are some times where I'm aware that he plays a role. But it's almost like if you're raising a child, you're giving like a child, I don't know, a book that inspires a child to go in and read it, and they become a doctor. That child still had to make the choice to go to medical school and do all these things. You can inspire the child to do certain things and kind of give them a hand in a sense, like, okay, a guiding hand, but you couldn't drag that person into medical school to become the doctor that they say they wanted to be when they were a child. You were just the spark. So in a lot of ways, God is just that guiding hand. That's what it feels like. It's a guiding hand. It's not a controlling thing like you would want it to be, which is, well, I'm not going to let any bad things happen to you.
No. I've already covered that I do think that suffering is a tool for growth. That's not that I'm not contesting that. It's just that if I were to ask God for help and I were to get it, and then I were to say, thank you, God, then it would be logical that I could do the same thing for when things go wrong. If you can't always credit God, but never blame him. It goes both ways. It's a two-way street.
I mean, hey, this is your logic, and I can't.
I'm just being consistent.
Can't debate it.
Can I just say this is so? Well, first of all, Joseph, I wonder if you had a life change because you're always Joseph and today you're Joe. Did you? Yeah, like a name change, like the biblical characters.
Yeah,
which is fine. I mean, I don't know if you prefer Joe now. I don't want to call you Joseph if you prefer. You don't care?
No. It's let's say close friends and family call me Joseph, and
Gotcha.
Others typically call me Joe.
Well, I'm pretty sure after all the conversations we've had, we are close friends and family now.
Call me Joseph.
But Joseph, so I find it interesting that with all the conversations we've had, you don't have a source book or source material of any sort that is your standard for defining God, that you say, I know God is this because it comes from this source. Your definition of God is seemingly constantly in flux, which tells me that God isn't really something that tells you who he is. You seem to be determining who God is to fit your narrative of what you want a God to be, which is very strange because if you're just inventing as you go along, why do you really need that? Because you're just basically creating a narrative in your head anyway of what you want this God to be. But it sounds to me like your life would go exactly the same way without that additional thing called God. What use does this God serve for you when he's just an idea that you just keep redefining until it makes sense to you?
There are things that only I would know that would identify God for who he is. And you're not wrong, by the way, about how sometimes I would potentially superimpose what I think God is or should be or is not. Which is not dissimilar from what a lot of Christians who believe in the scripture. The scripture, it can tell you God is this way, and you got some Christians who take that as gospel, but discard that and take this part. That's how you got different sects of Christianity.
No doubt.
Even those who have this structure, supposed structure of a book, they, amongst hundreds of different sections of Christianity, they struggle amongst themselves. Jehovah's Witnesses right, the Catholics are right, the Baptists, who's right? Right,
but you're not supporting a case here for the existence of God. You're actually demonstrating my point.
No, so what I guess the support for it would be in a sense that when I spoke about these individual experiences, but also collective to some extent, but because I can only observe things through my own eyes, and it's that's just the way it is. There are things that no matter what I think God is or is not, he'll show up to me in a way that it would shock, it would blow whatever expectations I had out the water. It would be completely just to me random. But then looking back, it was all planned. But nothing I could have done to cause this to happen. So for example, like let's just say that I, like a lot of Christians do, felt a certain way about the gay community. Like most Christians do, they read the Bible and they read Leviticus and they see that's what it says about gay. And so you wanting to be following God, you'll look at that and say, well, gays are this, gays are that. You become fixated on how bad they are because it's sort of like connected to all these other things like bestiality and all these other weird things. But it was God who corrected me on that. It wasn't I could not have read any differently in the Bible because the Bible told me that I'm supposed to look at them and see them as sinners.
So, all right. So we got to wrap this up because it's 3 hours now. We do have to wrap this up, but I'm going to ask you one last question, and then I'm going to give you the last word, and then we're gonna end this because we got to go. How do you distinguish between these experiences you have that tell you how to understand the Bible or how to understand what's happening? How do you distinguish them between being God and just being your own thoughts about what you want?
One is when it subverts my expectations or current thinking pattern. Like I'm 180 degrees, and I'm like, I would have never thought of it that way, and it just comes out of the blue, or is revealed to me in a way that I would have never gone out of my way to research that, to change that mindset. So that's one way. The second way is cliche, but it's an overwhelming presence of love. Like, even though, for example, I'm wrong about this thinking, or I'm wrong about how I feel about this, or I'm wrong about this action that I'm doing, it's still in his disappointment, and it's like, like there's still love behind that I feel. It's never condemnation. That's another clue that I know that's from God. Because I might condemn myself. So you say, well, how do I know the difference between him and it's not me? I might feel guilty about certain things, but even though it's a bad thing, technically, like for theft, for example, this feeling of love, this overwhelming sense of love, it's like it brings you to tears, and it makes you not want to steal anymore. It makes you not want to do things that you used to do anymore. And that supersedes anything that you read in scripture. It just does.
Did you ever think that, did you ever realize that people in life who have one track of thinking and then hit this moment where out of the blue, they just get this idea that just revolutionizes their thinking and sometimes even changes the world because it's some invention that hit them? That's called an epiphany, right? People have them.
True.
They're not necessarily a god. They're just that's how the brain works, because it's always in thought. And sometimes you hit this moment, you're like, holy shit, eureka, right? Sounds to me like that's also what you're describing. So what I'm asking, which you still didn't answer, is how do you distinguish it between God and just an epiphany?
Or something like that, which is a good example. Oh, I got an idea. I invented a light bulb. Oh, I've done 1,000 experiments, and now my brain connected the dots. Epiphany. I got the light bulb. Edison. But I'm talking about like in a moral sense, like things that I morally would say, I stand on this. Nothing can change me from this way of thinking and way of feeling. Nothing can. I am dogmatically going in this direction, and something dramatically outside of my own thought, you could say it's an epiphany. But if I'm not even considering those other thoughts, like a Thomas Edison would when he's testing different ideas to come up with the light bulb, I'm talking one track minded. And then something outside of me is like, it's like all minded. And it's like, whoa, okay, I never would have thought of it that way. And I've never even considered it. And I'm speaking from a moral, spiritual perspective. Not that the epiphanies aren't a spiritual thing, because I also believe that comes from the spiritual plane as well. Even though you would say it's all brain, it's a connection there. Ideas aren't just brain matter and neurons firing. That's a process that takes place from something outside of itself, but that's a whole different thing. But there's subtle things that you kind of over time with your relationship with God, you just kind of know the difference. What's the difference between me just having an idea from a bunch of different books I read, different ideas I've taken from different people, and now I got this thing, and God and his idea and what he's telling me that's different from what's just in my mind. There is a difference, and I don't even know how to verbalize what that difference is. I can feel the difference.
Well,
I can
tell you what, this
distinguish
week, go and try to figure that out. Figure out how you distinguish it. How do you tell the difference? Because I'd love to have you come back and explain it to us. So we got to end the show, though. So I'm going to cut it off now because it's a good breaking point. But thank you again, Joseph, for joining us. You are considered a friend here. We always welcome you back anytime. Love having you here.
Absolutely.
But it is time to go. We've been on for way too long, so we got to cut it short. But you're awesome, dude, and we'll catch you next week. All right, I'm going to bump you and end the show, my friend. Thanks again for coming on, Joe.
Take care, man.
Take care.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget, tomorrow, the Astrology of the Bible with Mark Chiachir, 4:30 p.m. Eastern on the Unraveler show. And then right after that at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, here on Skeptic Haven. You can come on and check out Critical Call with AJ and Mark Reed. And then, of course, don't forget to join me and Richie on Sunday to continue our conversation. This is what's going on this week and lots more. We appreciate you being a part of our lives. Thanks for joining the Deconversionists. And remember, every Christian has their own version of Christianity. We're here to unravel your conversion. Good night, everybody.